Okay, perfect. Well, hi, everyone. Great to be part of the efforts this week with Cyber Dialogue in Davos. I'm Leah McLean. I'm a Vice President of Cybersecurity Specialist at MasterCard. And today we have joining with us from Dallas, which we're both based in, George Finney. George, how are you?
I'm doing awesome, Leah. How are you?
Good. So let's see, we have a couple minutes with you. And while we do, can you give us a quick introduction and background on you?
First, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for doing the interview, and thanks to the Cyber Future Foundation for hosting us. I'm George Finney. If you don't know me, I'm the Chief Security Officer for Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. But probably better known for some of the cybersecurity books I've written. Most recently, Project Zero Trust, where I collaborated with John Kindervag to kind of tell a fictional story about a company that goes through their zero trust journey, but they use Kindervag's design methodology and maturity model around zero trust. I think what I love doing in cyber is really kind of taking some of the things that we do every day and making them simple and more approachable, both for new folks coming into cyber, as well as some of the non-technical folks that we have to build partnerships and relationships with, whether it's HR or leadership teams or CFOs. I'm just passionate that I think people are our secret weapon when it comes to cybersecurity.
Thanks for that great background. And I've got to get a hold of that latest book on zero trust. And so in terms of the topics that the folks will be speaking on and going over this week at Cyber Dialogue, what's the topic of interest primarily for you of all the topics this week?
Gosh, I think zero trust is the year that it's going to take off. I mean, obviously, it's the biggest buzzword right now in cybersecurity. But I think something changed last year when President Biden issued his executive order on zero trust. Whereas before we didn't really hear a lot of practitioners or CISOs talking about zero trust. Now that it's kind of out on the table, everybody's talking about it and actually starting to do something about it. I'm anxious to hear from other leaders where they're at in their journeys, and also to help break down the myths or misconceptions. Right, a lot of people kind of have, I think, dismissed zero trust as one of those buzzwords that doesn't mean anything. And actually, as a strategic approach, it really, has changed organizations. It's one of the reasons that I can be here and talk to you today, literally, without having to go down and do firefighting. I think it really has shaped the way we do things here. And gosh, just excited to hear other folks talk about it.
No, thanks, George. And you kind of touched on what the next question is around the major trends that you see this year, right? We're still in January. It's still early on. You talked a little bit about what you see coming for zero trust. Anything else that you want to share with us on the major trends that you think we'll see this year in the next 12 months?
My hope is I'm an optimistic CISO, but my hope is that the economy starts to turn around, right? And that's impacted budgets for everyone everywhere. And I think one of the things that we've seen in security is we're not seeing a lot of cuts in security. In fact, we're maybe adding people, whereas our infrastructure teams are maybe losing people. That makes it so hard to build partnerships and relationships where they're like, you're getting people, and I'm losing mine. But honestly, it's the IT people, it's the infrastructure teams that have to do a lot of the work around things like zero trust or just basic things like patching. Gosh, I'm really excited to see things turn around and for folks to be able to be proactive rather than just reactive when it comes to cyber threats.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for your optimism, George, and sharing the insights from your view and your lens. We very much appreciate it. Thanks for being here with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Leah.
Of course. Okay, next I think we have up Chris Painter.
Hey, how are you? Nice to
Hi,
be with you.
Chris. Good. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Look at that behind you. Data center operations, whatever that may be.
It's actually the original computer from Bletchley Park that broke the Lorenz code, the higher level Nazi code. It's the first digital electronic programmable computer in the world, but they kept it secret to the mid-70s, so they lost any commercial advantage.
Oh, okay. There we go. That's quite a good background. So can you give us a little bit of, introduce yourself in terms of your background in a couple minutes and to catch everyone up who may not know you?
Great. Well, I've been doing cyber in various capacities for about 33 years now. So for a long time, before there was a web, but not before there was an internet. I started as a prosecutor, prosecuting high-tech crimes, including Kevin Mitnick, the hacker, and others back in the 80s and 90s. And then I went to the mothership at Maine Justice and ran the computer crime intellectual property section. Went to the FBI briefly, went to the White House, to the National Security Council, created the Cyber Directorate and the International Strategy for Cyberspace. Then became the world's first cyber diplomat at the State Department for about 6.5 years, focusing on all these different issues. And left there about 4 years ago. And now, among other things, and I do a bunch of different things now, I am the president of something called the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, which is a worldwide capacity building cyber capacity building organization based in The Hague, but has companies, civil society, and many countries as part of it.
Excellent. That is quite an impressive background. So as we look at
behind me, not my actual background, but
both are no, the career background matches the scenic background there. But in terms of this week at Davos and some of the topics that they'll be discussing, what's the real big topic of interest to you?
Well, I mean, many topics, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there because there's so many topics that interest me. But I feel I should speak on what my organization does, my foundation does. Look, I know that there's a panel talking about workforce development and capacity building. That's obviously a critical linchpin, not just for companies, but for countries around the world. I mean, I think it's right, following this now for as long as I have. I think we've always hoped that cybersecurity would finally become a real priority, a national security priority, an economic priority, a priority in the boardroom. And I think we've turned that corner. I think ransomware and other things have done that. But what we're not prepared for is we don't have the folks who can actually deal with this. And that's the subject of a panel this week, which I think is really important. But also what we also don't have is a lot of governments aren't prepared for this. They don't have the institutional setup. They don't have the coordination setup like the US does or the UK does. They don't have institutions like national level certs. And as I think it's axiomatic that we're only strong as the weakest link, that smart cyber criminals or nation states route their attacks through countries that don't have good capability and can't cooperate and don't have the ability to detect or work on these things. So I think it's in all of our interests, both governments, but also the private sector and others, to work together to try to raise the bar around the world. And that's something that's been going on. There's been lots of discussions in the UN about this. There have been other discussions about this. My organization is holding later this year, probably in September, a global conference where we're bringing together high-level folks from government, industry, civil society, to really jumpstart this issue, because I think it's critical. I view the capacity building part of this as the foundation to all the good things we're trying to achieve on the internet, but also combating all the bad things if we're going to be effective and do all the things our prior speaker talked about. Even at the boardroom and company level, we really need to get behind this. And so I think it's a real, it's something we can't sit on our hands about. And fortunately, I think the political willingness is finally there. We'll see. I'm still a little worried that things will slip off the radar again. I've seen that too many times where people get really excited about this for like 10 minutes when some big thing happens and it goes away. But I think we're past that.
Yeah, and certainly the geopolitical issues we saw last year going into this year have raised more of a light on cyber, which is good. But yeah,
well, I think that was the whole Ukraine invasion certainly is a good example of that, where I think there was a false narrative around that cyber didn't play as big a role as people expected. And that's in part because, people said things like cyber 9/11s or cyber Pearl Harbor. And that's not, the reality. The reality is we're getting hit every day. And indeed, in the war in Ukraine, we saw Russia use cyber very effectively, not decisively, because they can actually use bombs. They don't have to use cyber to take out a power plant if they can use a bomb. But they did a lot to take out command and control in the beginning. And I think the most surprising thing has been the resilience of the Ukrainians. And again, that goes back to capacity building. They've been training for this for the last 8 years.
And so in the last couple seconds we have left, Chris, major trends that you see coming this year.
Yeah. It's always hard to predict this, but ransomware is not going away. I was part of a ransomware task force that chaired one a couple of years ago. This needs a sustained effort, so that's going to continue to be a big issue. I think, people breathe some of it a sigh of relief that Russia hasn't retaliated against U.S. companies and others. We're not out of the woods yet. I think Jen Easterly and others are right about shields up. I think that it's, it may be coming when the pain becomes too much for them. So let's not rest on our laurels on that either. I think the threat environment's going to continue to advance. The fortunate thing is I think we're better at working to blunt this, and things like the Cyber Futures conference, I think helps bring people together to talk about this.
Excellent. Well, Chris, thank you so much again for joining us virtually and sharing your views and the great work that you're doing. Looking forward to hearing more from you throughout the week and this year.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. And I think, do I see Les here with us today?
Hey, Leah.
Hey, good to see you again. I know. Well, Les, welcome.
I'm wearing my purple book.
I love it.
Appropriate for this weather. Thank you.
Awesome. So where are you calling in from today?
From New York.
Okay. Well, so Les, for those who don't know you, give us a couple minutes of an introduction on yourself and your background.
Well, okay. I'm the global head of AppSec, and I also deal with cryptography at Estée Lauder companies. Also, I've been in the industry for a long time. And so I've done the whole gambit from the operational work, being a developer, hardcore developer, assembly level to networking, business continuity, and so on and so forth. And I've also leaned towards understanding business, so getting that business perspective as we mature and so on. I mean, I could go on, but just leave it at that. There's everybody else is also big.
Oh yeah. So the topics of that they'll be covering this week in Davos, of those topics, which one is of big interest to you?
Okay, there's several. One of them is actually the supply chain, and it's a bigger word for it. Could be in terms of products as well as it could be suppliers themselves and vendors and so on. But I'm going to take that tact as one. But there's another aspect from an AppSec perspective that is near and dear to me, and also the social part of things. So I'm going to try. How much time do I have, Bruce?
5 minutes total, so you probably have about 3 minutes left.
Okay, so let me go really quick. I don't think because we're going to talk about 2023, right? I'm concerned about the social engineering aspect. So that's the awareness and the people aspect of things. And there's a big concern about that because I don't think that's going to stop from ransomware and phishing and so on. And therefore, one has to create this champion program. And I think those lines are blurring between security and over time. And the reason is also because now with the economy and so on and so forth, there's a cutback on a lot of stuff. And there's a dearth already of practitioners. So we got to work on that. Okay, that's the solution kind of thing. From another aspect, from again, third party and so on and so forth products, I think we don't do a good job, and we should, in terms of cataloging. We tend to look in myopic chunks. So for example, we say, SBOM, we use, that's a big word, but that what used to be SBOM is, morphed into different aspects. Now you'd think in terms of what was one app is actually 1,000 microservices, for example, and those have libraries and so on. There's some really good work happening in the industry in open source, and there's some phenomenal people, and we can talk that in our open book sessions. But that is another big one that's happening, and I think we need to do a good job of correlating that, because otherwise it just ends up being like SBOM. It's a big word, and nobody really looks and doesn't know how to do it. But how do you address once you have a library, for example, being used in a microservice, And if you say Log4j is an example, right, or anything else, how do you relate that and block and know exactly where that place is? So that's one aspect. The third one I want to go, I have to go this, I can't say it. I feel so strongly about API security because today everything is code. And what we know of as web and, and all that stuff, we talk of OWASP top 10, but people think in terms of web, it's actually, there's also OWASP API top 10. And today, everything is APIs. In fact, your Tesla or any other EV is actually another API engine, actually, is communicating, and all of them communicate, and we don't do a good job of, because of microservices. Again, everything communicates, all apps, everything, and it's actually focus of all innovation to APIs. And my take on this, again, solutioning it to that is start shield right. So start from the operational, because we don't have a clue of what we have, and then go back into, the DevSec, the other part of it from development space. I can go into details, but that's my New York minute, if you will.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us and what you see coming in AppSec and this year. And I know that's a lot of room for more advancements, and I'm sure we'll see you around on other speaking circuits and this week virtually at Davos. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Leah, and the whole team there. Thank you.
Thank you, Les.
I'll step out.
Okay. And I think Nitin, we have you next. Yes.
Good
Hi.
morning.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise, Leah. Nice to meet you too. Hi, everyone.
So Nitin, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Absolutely. So, hi, folks. I'm Nitin Raina. I'm joining from not so cold Greater Chicago area. I'm based in Illinois, and I'm the CISO for ThoughtWorks. ThoughtWorks is a software consulting professional services firm. So, been with the firm for 12 years, a long time to be related to a company and in the security, field. But I'm really, really glad. I've been overall just, briefly talking about myself, spent close to 25 years in the industry. And last, I would say 8 years or so has been primarily on security, so cyber, information security, product security, all of that. And I'm also part of the Purple Book community chapter, and super excited to be here.
Excellent. So Nitin, of the topics that they'll be discussing in depth this week at the Cyber Dialogue in Davos, which topics are near and dear to you of interest?
So a couple of them, right? Which really stand out for me, and obviously as a CISO, I am in front of the board of directors, a couple of times in a year. So how you communicate to the board in a meaningful, in a relatable manner, that's one which is very near to me. So I think it's called as a board engagement session. The other one, which I could relate to what Les was saying. Being a software, company, we have to do lots around securing supply chain, software supply chain. So that's very close to me as well. The trends, how, products, how tools, technologies, all of that are working towards ensuring the end product is secure is so crucial. Gone are those days when you only talk about, hey, this process needs to be fixed. No, you have to look at your dependencies, libraries. People never thought about those things. So that's one which really caught my attention. And the third, which is very dear to me, Leah, is how you grow the cyber workforce and capacity. Because, I keep hearing all the time, there are like 2 million jobs here, 3 million jobs there. You still don't have people who understand how to marry cyber, business, operations, all of this together. It's very difficult for a lot of people. So getting the right talent, building the right talent. I'm a huge advocate. I have a close to 40 odd member team. It's a large team, but I have people who have been technologists, who have been designers, who have been architects, who have even been a business analyst, whom we have moved into security with training, with certification, with on the job work. And that's a topic which is very dear to me, Leah, if I could say that.
No, thank you for sharing. I love that you said not just getting the talent, but building them, right? That is critical. And so when you look at, this year, we're still early on January, what are some of the major trends that you see coming in the next 12 months here?
So, two, I've been, a lot of people, a lot of panelists, a lot of people on the call have mentioned a few things. So I don't want to repeat, zero trust. Like I actually call it adaptive trust. I don't like the word zero. So, quote me on that if you want. But there are two which I want to highlight. One is the hybrid working. So a lot of us, I'm super happy being at home. I work 12 hours, 11 hours, much more productive. So the form of remote working, hybrid working is not going to go away, period, right? So how do we emphasize the need to embed cybersecurity needs with remote workers? So that is only going to get more and more attention. So organizations similar to ours, tech companies, non-tech companies, everybody is looking at how they can, secure the home networks. Can you bring in a view of SASE and VPNs to the next stage, right? How do you, I wouldn't use the word prohibit, but you allow people to use personal computers in the right way, right? So you can access something which is not very confidential and critical, but you can still do your basic calendar check, for example. So hybrid working in a secure way is something which I think will need more time and attention, even in 2023 and beyond, because it's still developing, right? Post-COVID, a lot of people have come back and said, we can do this, we can do that, but the domain is still maturing. So that's one that I would quote. The second one, which is again very close to me, is the role of building a security-aware culture. People are still the weakest link in DOS. It's not about tech. I keep telling people, I'm a technologist myself, so sorry to say this, but it is about people. How do I get my developers to not check in a secret? How do I get my infrastructure people to not spin up an AWS instance with open vulnerable ports? So building that security aware culture, I'm not talking about your typical people person and going through a phishing attempt and leading something which sharing some secrets, but I'm talking about your techies as well. A lot of us are humans at the end. Everybody is a human, so we make mistakes. How do you enable, how do you grow, how do you build that security aware culture in your organization in a consistent way? Because I think somebody said, I believe a gentleman right at the start, I think it was George, we're not getting a lot of additions in our budgets. We will add people, we will add technologies and tools, but we will need to transform and change the way organizations work, because we want the devs, the techies, the finance people, everybody to actually embrace security. So that will be the two things which I will highlight. There are a bunch of other things, but I think I would leave that to my fellow peers to share.
No, thank you so much, Nitin, for joining us from your not so cold Chicago. And I'm going to be curious on following your trend around how do we bring in more personal devices in the workforce, because that I don't know if I'm there yet on the mindset, but maybe you can convince us.
I would love to do that. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you. Leah.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I think next we have Jim Rutt with us today.
Yes, I'm coming.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, where is my video? Hold on a second here. Sorry, Leah. There we go.
Well, good to see you again. And where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from New Jersey in the US.
Excellent. Well, Jim, for those who don't know you, can you just start off giving a little bit of introduction about yourself and your background?
Certainly. So I've been a practitioner for about 25 years across multiple sectors, so finance, pharmaceutical, healthcare. I've been the CIO and CISO at the Dana Foundation since December 2010, so about 12 years. And so I've got kind of a wide swath of experience across multiple sectors, and I've seen a lot of different things and a lot of big events. And it's, I think, no more now. It's certainly an exciting time for cyber in general.
Excellent. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And in terms of, this week at Davos, what they'll be discussing, the topics, which one is close to you or of interest to you and that you can talk to us a little bit about?
Absolutely. It's board representation in terms of the cyber aspect. So cyber representation at the board level.
Okay, that is definitely a big one. So looking at the trends for this year, right? The major trends that you see and think are going to be really top of mind. What are those for 2023 that you can share with us?
So I think we're coming to a culmination of events here based on what we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years, which is the increase in general breaches and cyber attacks going on in in most industries, I would say. The amount of or the lack of understanding to date from the board level in terms of some of the key cyber constructs in terms of risk management from a cyber perspective. I think most boards are very well skilled in the fiduciary aspects of risk and the operational aspects of risk in general, maybe even legal. In terms of cyber and the lingua franca that we use to describe all these different cyber events, it's a little bit more difficult for folks to place that in the proper context to be able to develop risk in general or understand the risk modeling that we use as practitioners and translate that into the enterprise level risk that they're charged with ultimately determining.
No, I love that you shared that. And I think another big thing, hopefully, that we see this year continue from last year is the importance of quantifying that risk as well across the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's this has been one of the major challenges, right? A lot of these metrics that we use are somewhat subjective, and it's easy to kind of talk about this from a qualitative perspective, to your point, to be able to understand occurrences of risks or, you know, in terms of how often these things can come up, because there's not really a long history like in other areas like fiduciary, for instance. I think we're getting more and more educated, and I think we're taking that education and we're trying to help the board understand, you know, where we're at with that. So.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for being here with us today from New Jersey and sharing your viewpoints on these topics of very much importance and coming up in 2023 and the work that you're doing. We look forward to seeing you around again this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and hi, Maria.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm calling from a very rainy Atlanta today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. So Maria, for those who don't know you, can you just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm a long-term IBMer. Right now, I'm responsible for the cloud native implementations across different cloud service providers. I have a lot of experience in the data space, structured and unstructured, that culminated with me being part of IBM Watson and learning how to apply artificial intelligence. And in the last 6-7 years, I've been building DevSecOps projects from scratch, DevSecOps and data protection programs from scratch as part of the digital transformation.
Excellent. No, thank you for sharing the work that you're doing at IBM. In terms of the topics that and conversations that they'll be having this week in Davos, what are some of those that are really important to you?
So originally, I was not sure what more I can add to the predictions of the Forresters, Gartners of the world, you know, the big fours. IBM Security has a lot of predictions and trends for 2023. These are all the things that keep us up at night, right? Common problems. Our dialogue today has very similar streams, very well formulated. You know, we are talking about a cyber war, AIM, zero trust, security, securing critical infrastructure, applications, data security, IoT devices that handle data that may not be properly secured or managed at the edge. So all of those things. Of course, my perspective, though, is a little bit more practical. I'm a digital transformation leader, so I always try to view the cybersecurity through the lens of the digital transformation. So yes, we have increased cyber events. We need more security talent, but hey, we also have a huge increase of what we're required to do. We work from home. We collect more sensitive data because of the direct contact with our customers. We deliver software much more rapidly to the field. So what does this mean to us in 2023? What do we need to get it right? So the premise of my trends are the new requirements for the digitalization. And so I have a couple of items that we kind of gotta get right. We need to secure our software supply chain. That's kind of a number one on my list. We need to keep building our zero trust implementations and building it right. No less trust, building it right? Including all of the application data sites, identity management within the way we build the opposite of the castle and moat traditional model. I also believe that this data-centric security and privacy will be the foundation of how the businesses are going to run, and they're building their brands and they're going to be engaging with their customers. And of course, the last topic that came up in the previous speakers as well is skills and trainings. This is another big area, but the skills and the training, we can never hire enough cybersecurity professionals. That's why I view the skills and the training in terms of building a culture, creating those partnerships in terms of security across the entire company. So these are my 4 elements, and my choice to resolve them or to provide a solution to them is to kind of opt out for this advanced innovation that we have. Come on. I mean, we can ask our hackers, or we cannot afford the hackers to be more innovative than us, right? So in 2020, I had a session on AI, how to use AI for DevSecOps toolchain, inside of the toolchain, and what are the benefits for that. 2021, I presented on zero trust and DevSecOps. In 2022, I presented the DevSecOps and blockchain. In multiple sessions I had throughout on data privacy and AI, the digital trust in the time of data explosion. So these are my kind of a primarily topic and areas of where I'm looking to learn more and collaborate across the globe.
Well, excellent. I love that you shared it from your digital transformation perspective. I think it's always good to get the different perspectives, and very much looking forward to seeing you present this year and what you'll be sharing beyond those other sessions in the last couple of years that you've spoke about. So thank you for joining and being here with us today.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank all of the organizers for the excellent organization and the opportunity to share, to open the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Maria. And Arvin, I think we have you up next. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Leah and team. Super excited to be here.
No, excited to have you all as well. So Arvin, where are you calling in from? And can you share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, so I'm calling in from the rainy city of Nashville, Tennessee. And about my background, personally, I live in Princeton, New Jersey, and happily married for 22 years with 2 daughters. One is 18 years, who started college this year, and the other who started school this year, Arini and Anya.
Well, congrats.
Thank you. And professionally, I've spent about a decade at Citigroup, building their technology and then subsequently risk and security programs. I built a red team for Experian. I built SOC for Willis Towers Watson, and cybersecurity strategy for Verizon. And finally, security programs for a Fortune 10 AmerisourceBergen, covering data protection and the cloud security. Currently, I work for Nissan. I'm responsible for all things security for Nissan Americas, and that include not just technology systems, but also supporting the future of connected cars, how we are going to secure them, and the IoT devices, as the robotics and the AIs start to pop up.
That's quite the experience. Thank you. And I think, yes, connected cars, we still have a ways to go there, right? But everything's definitely getting more connected. So glad that you're in that space to help us out. In terms of the topics this year, at Davos this week that they will be covering in the sessions, which one is near and dear to you?
The future of business, and then how does that translate into technology adoption by business, And then comes the security piece. How do we secure technology that are supporting the business pieces? So there are three main pillars of what we are hyper focusing on. The very first thing that has just started as a trend late last year is the AI adoption, and what can AI do for business, right? So that's where we start looking at ChatGPT, for an example. Everybody's typing in there and coming out with, hey, set up my meeting and do these things. What does that mean from business perspective? How do we monetize that AI? How do we incorporate that AI on what we are doing today, the way we make money today? How do we increase our revenue or decrease our cost by introducing those efficiencies? I think that's like on top and foremost from the business side, and that translates into how technology was supported. So I know people must have seen Satya Nadella himself. He announced that we are offering the AI capabilities, including ChatGPT, on Azure. So what that means is like hundreds and thousands and millions of people can rapidly adopt it into the business cycle, right? So if business cycle is adopting AI, what does it translate into security piece? And we already had cases in the last few years about, prominent AI heads of technologies at Googles of the world, leaving due to ethical issues, and how does AI interpret certain biases at all? So that's definitely on top of our radar. Let's start thinking about the disruption or potential disruption that AI can bring on the business model. How do we bring and support technology to adopt that, and what role security can play? Right, so that's one angle. The other angle, if we go a layer below, we start thinking about what are these AI things going to do for us, right, in the security aspect. So in security, you start asking yourself questions about, hey, on the offensive side, does that give a huge advantage to attackers that, they already have dark web markets to go buy the ransomware and start targeting companies, and many businesses get impacted? Will that accelerate those trends, or will that introduce new security complications to think about or to attack companies, right? And then how do we adopt and prepare the defense using those AI pieces? Yeah. So how do we stay ahead? How do we adopt them into, let's say we spend a lot of time in security operations center, of technologies, all the logs should go to a centralized place and they should get filtered and give it. Will there be a future of no SIM, no SOC? Why? Because you can just type it in and things comes together, right? So those are the things to think about, the programs, the vulnerability management, the impact it would have on the security part. So that's the second part, I would say. And the third part is to think about the SaaS security. 10 years ago, cloud was a foregone conclusion, and now it is the technology today. So what's coming next after technology? Technology is here to serve the business. Even with cloud, we need coders and developers to write the application, but the SaaS model takes that away. That reduces that dependency on technology. So now we have a combination of, here is tons of services that we are already providing in on-prem, and now here we are adopting the SaaS services where we have very little control on many things here. As a security professional, how do we think about those combinations? And how do we prepare to secure those hybrid world where your technology data is spread across hundreds of, if not thousands of technology service provider versus, hey, these are my data center, let me just secure it. It's a very different world now. So that's the third thing I would say is on my radar. And the last part I would say is, yes, crypto is down. Yes, the Bitcoin is super low in value, and tons of companies are going down and other issues. But the blockchain piece, which is beyond those hypes, there are many underlying adoptions of blockchain. How do we start thinking about manufacturing, warehouses, and other pieces into those areas, the adoption and security of those? So Leah, I would say, mainly those, if I have to categorize 3 areas to think about: AI, think about SaaS, how business is adopting, and then think about the blockchain pieces, even though it's dying out on one front, but the other one is going to last longer.
Thank you so much, Arvind. You gave us a lot to think about there in terms of what to look for this year. You can almost add Chief Futurist to your title as well. So really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and up next, Andrew. How are you today?
Good. It's still early morning in California, but I'm really pleased to be here.
Ah, yeah. So, yeah, you're before 8 a.m. there. So hopefully I don't know if it's sunny or rainy right now, but welcome. And Andrew, if you can share a little bit about your background and yourself, just a couple-minute introduction to kick us off.
Of course, Andrew Grecki here. Essentially, currently, I'm a senior manager with CrowdStrike Professional Services. However, the last 11 years I spent with IBM in various cybersecurity roles. So started as an engineer and progressed through various consulting roles. And the last 4 or 5 years, I focus really on threat management and cyber resiliency. And currently I focus on cloud security. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. And so of the topics that they'll be covering this week in Davos at the Cyber Dialogue, which one is very close to you and of big interest?
Well, for me, cyber resiliency is a really close topic to my heart, partly because, if you look at what was happening from a cybersecurity perspective in the past, it used to be about compliance tools. It was largely vendor driven, but I think with the proliferation of cyber attacks, especially ransomware and other cyber attacks, it's really about, not only about how can we protect our enterprises, but also can we withstand those attacks? Can we recover from those attacks? But I would say most importantly, can we continue business operations under adverse conditions? So for me, cyber resiliency is it's a topic that is very close to my heart.
So in terms of cyber resiliency, or maybe others that you want to add around that, Andrew, thinking about, this year, we're still pretty early on. What are the major trends that you see that we'll be, looking at in the next 12 months here?
Yeah, of course. So I'd like to kind of answer from 2 perspectives. One, I will talk a bit about, the threat landscape. And then maybe I kind of pivot to technology and what's going to happen from a technology perspective in the industry. So I think, unfortunately, we are going to see ransomware is going to continue to be a top trend. As I explained earlier, I think we'll continue to see proliferation of cybercrime, with ransomware leading the way, in my view. Let's face it, it's a very lucrative business. Even, in recent years, we observed that threat actors who typically specialized or historically specialized in other types of cyber crimes, such as financial fraud, they moved into ransomware because it's just a very lucrative business. There's a lot of money to be made, and many businesses are just very insecure because technology is inherently insecure. But I think what also makes this situation worse is that we no longer face individual threat groups. In fact, I think we are dealing with a highly organized cybercrime ecosystem that is based on affiliate model. And based on the threat intelligence that we collect, and also from some of the breach investigations that I was involved in, we know that the ecosystem is comprised of malware developers, essentially those actors who write the ransomware, but also ransomware operators, so those operators who deploy the malware and compromise organizations. There's money laundering operations involved. There are even call centers. And also what we see is that those threat actors, collaborate. Their relationships are based on trust, brand reputation, and they run just very sophisticated operations that resemble real businesses. So that's why I think that for this reason, many enterprises will pay more attention to cyber resiliency, because it's, as I said earlier, it's no longer about, can we protect ourselves against those cyber attacks? It's, can we withstand those cyber attacks, and can we continue business operations? Can we ensure that some of the critical infrastructure and critical services that we provide to our communities, can we actually continue those operations? And Leah, in my consulting engagements, I've already seen, shift from kind of a compliance thinking towards like, well, cyber attacks are real. It can happen to us. What can we do to make sure that, we are not going to be down for 4 weeks?
No, thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing that great information. I know CrowdStrike puts out some really good threat intel reports too. So looking forward to seeing those this year. And thank you for your continued work in the field. We definitely know it's needed, and it's not slowing down anytime soon, right? So thanks for joining us from California early in the morning, and appreciate having you here.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Okay, bye-bye.
Sure thing. Max, how are you today?
Hi, Leah. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. So where are you calling in from? And then
I'm
tell us a little bit about yourself.
sure. I'm calling from New York. Not quite as early as it is out in California, but still a morning here. Brief introduction, managing director in Grant Thornton's cybersecurity practice. And the focus of my work, both with the firm and prior industry roles, has been in attack surface management, application security, and now software supply chain being a big topic and of concern to many folks, I think, for all the right reasons.
Thank you. So I guess with that said, the topics for that they'll be talking about in Davos this week, is supply chain one of those hot ones for you? Are there any others?
That is certainly the topic, that's pretty near dear to my heart, given some of the work that I've been doing recently. Yeah, so that's the topic. I don't know if I would necessarily call it a new trend. It's been top of mind for many folks throughout 2022 with, the attention from the US federal government and the executive order, and really how the federal agencies are looking to take a more programmatic approach to really not just think about the end product, how secure is the end application they're buying, although that's obviously very important, but the entire supply chain behind that product.
So when you look at the, yeah, you're right about that. And hopefully we see more advances in that area. But when you look at the big trends for 2023, what are you seeing this year that we'll need to
Yeah, sure. So, maybe kind of the way I think about software supply chain security, we hear SBOM a lot, a part of it, but it's not about the SBOM. We hear open source software that certainly plays a part of it, but it's not just that. So the way I think about it, the engineering teams who are developing our software products, they're essentially our suppliers, right? And then the tools that they use, the development processes, these are the logistics by which that product gets shipped to us, the end consumers of the applications. So really, I think about software supply chain holistically. It's the developers, it's the processes they use, it's the tools that they use, and it's these processes, the development end-to-end processes, that are becoming new high-value targets for attackers. So, we have an example is, from March of last year with the GitLab events, vulnerabilities that were exploited, and more recently, Circle CI, right? So attackers, to Andrew's points earlier, they're looking to scale their business. Just like we're looking to scale, the attackers are looking to scale their business. And one of the ways that I think they're seeing that their business can be scaled is by targeting shared resources. So where the developers become the target, and the shared resources that they use become the targets. But frankly, I think few organizations would put tools like Jenkins or Circle CI on the list of crown jewels, right? I think that's still a reality, or even consider those tools as part of that threat surface and that attack surface that could be exploited. So, with that said, given the state of the world, where would one even start? So in application security, traditionally, security by design is a thing, I think, in many organizations. That starts with threat modeling the application, threat modeling the architecture to really understand the threat vectors, how it can be exploited, and ensuring the application has the appropriate security controls that would prevent those threats from becoming an eventuality. So I think, kind of taking that thought a little bit further, is this idea that I think as an industry, we really need to start threat modeling, not just the end product to build applications, but that development process. So looking at the processes, the tools, the engineering ecosystems that developers use to understand what are the potential vulnerabilities, what are the potential entry points into the organization that a software that's exploited as it's being built can have obviously much more serious implications that something that's already been shipped and operating in, whether in the cloud or in a data center. And then, maybe finally, some of the helpful tools that I wanted to share that may help folks with thinking about how to threat model that end-to-end development processes. OWASP Top 10 CI/CD risks, a great resource that goes into what those risks are, what those mitigations project that was started by CIDR, recently taken over by OWASP. I think it's a great resource. And one is still a work in progress, a community effort that I've had the honor of contributing to as well. So I put a plug on that. It's called the Open Software Supply Chain Attack Reference, kind of similar to MITRE ATT&CK that goes through the kill chain. And that work in progress can be found at pbom.dev. Again, it's pbom.dev is a good resource. So again, the two things I would highlight is that OWASP Top 10 CI/CD risk and pbom.dev.
Thank you so much for sharing. We really do appreciate your very holistic view on supply chain cybersecurity. It's very much, I think, needed. And thank you for sharing that reference, software supply chain attack reference, the pbom.dev. Thank you. And congrats, or look forward to seeing more of your work in that area too over this year. Thank you. And Donnie, I think you're up next here.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, it's good to see you, and it's really an honor and a privilege to be speaking with everyone today. I'm actually joining from very cloudy, overcast, miserable Missouri right now, out in rural Missouri. I'm a principal security researcher at MasterCard. I've actually worked here at MasterCard for over 18 years now. In my role, I research a lot of the emergent threats and capabilities to try to help drive our cybersecurity strategy. In addition, I'm also an adjunct professor of cybersecurity at Utica University, so I get the academic side as well.
Amazing. And it's good to kind of officially meet you. I've been at MasterCard for a year now in the cybersecurity DNS. So, but anyways, so Donnie, the topics that they're covering this year in Davos or this week, which one or few are of big interest to you?
Sure. Well, they're all of interest to me, I guess. But when I'm discussing the top trends for 2023, I like to focus on how one field of that of machine learning is going to have increasing impacts on all aspects of cybersecurity. Recently I've been doing a lot of research into machine learning within cybersecurity, and much of that focus has been on how machine learning is vulnerable to attacks when we implement it in an adversarial environment such as cybersecurity. And we know many of the security products today rely on machine learning because it is such a powerful tool. However, what we also hear sometimes is vendors telling us to just drop their product in our environment and it will learn what is normal. And after 3 to 6 months, it's ready to protect us from all sorts of harm. The problem is, how do you know that what is normal is good? Most likely you don't. And that is why it's important to follow a lot of sound practices, including things like data sanitization, distribution analysis, robust learning, and of course, adversarial development methodologies when implementing machine learning-based cybersecurity tools. Now, in addition to machine learning playing such an important role within cybersecurity and protecting us, It's also going to serve as a very powerful tool to forge and augment attacks. Over the last 2 years, I've explored a couple areas of AI that will have profound impacts on cybersecurity. The first I'd like to talk about is the use of machine learning to create realistic deepfakes. So just imagine some fake footage of a company executive committing fraud, or maybe a politician committing sexual assault just days before an election, or a soldier conducting atrocities on foreign soil. I would say that in our environment where we have so much uncertainty and conspiracy theories thrive, that such deepfakes could lead to catastrophic consequences. I think we're at an inflection point where soon these deepfakes are going to move from being a kind of an oddity to being a very destructive social and political force. In my own research, I've demonstrated the ability to create such realistic fake video and audio using just readily available open source tools on commodity hardware. In the past year, we have seen a few of these deepfakes used in many different ways. For example, a fake video of Ukrainian President Zelensky urging Ukrainians to lay down their arms, or the deepfake of Binance executive that tricked potential clients in online meetings. Fortunately, in both of these cases, those targeted subjects, President Zelensky and Binance, were able to respond quickly and effectively to debunk those fakes. Now, any high-profile individual could be targeted, so companies have to have a strategy to deal with such attacks. Some things you might want to consider are robust monitoring for videos and other content purporting to be from your executives, use of watermarking capabilities in videos you create, and most importantly, a communications team ready to respond immediately. The potential damage caused by a deepfake going viral necessitates a rapid and effective response. The next area I'm researching is using natural language processing and machine learning to create realistic phishing emails. You know, we all have heard the adage that people are our weakest link, and that many of the sophisticated attacks actually start with some basic phishing emails. And we spend all this effort teaching users how to spot a phishing email. Meanwhile, those emails keep getting better and better. Well, they're about to get much better with improvements in natural language processing. You know, there was a recent study from Singapore's government technology agency where they actually got better results, more people clicking on links from an AI as a service platform than on handcrafted, specific targeted spear phishing. But well, guess what? You know, that power to create those realistic phishing emails is now there for anyone who wants to try it out. I mean, for instance, just ask OpenAI's Chat GPT and it'll create one for you. Now that combination though of machine learning and natural language processing, it's not limited to phishing emails. This powerful combination can help spread any kind of misinformation you like. Much like responding to deep fakes, organizations must develop, you know, strategies, very clear strategies for countering misinformation on all fronts. In another part of my research, I leveraged OpenAI to create some very convincing articles discussing supposed data breaches, and they were complete with realistic sources and references. So what does this all mean though to the cybersecurity field? Well, what I found is for many cybersecurity practitioners, unfortunately, AI still seems to them like some sort of magic fairy dust. And unfortunately, that's also how a lot of products are marketed. I believe that a winning security strategy for now and into the future lies in ensuring that more cybersecurity professionals understand machine learning, how it works, and how and when to apply it. When I first entered this security field many years ago, you know, it was accepted that security practitioners needed to understand networking, operating systems, and maybe even some good old application development. From there, we could understand intrusion detection, malware, data exfiltration. Well, I believe you better add machine learning to that basket of essentials for cybersecurity professionals. AI, especially machine learning, will fundamentally and exponentially improve the capabilities of the attacker and the defender. If you want to build an effective strategy for the future, then you must dedicate the time and energy to ensure your security organization understands this technology, how it can be used, both in attack and defense, and when to use it. So in closing, I want to leave with three things that I think that everyone needs to do from their security team. First, yes, definitely leverage machine learning to enhance your security posture. You need to. You can't keep up with the attacks without that. Secondly, though, protect that machine learning from adversarial attacks. And finally, prepare for the AI augmented attacks coming your way, especially misinformation and phishing. So remember the old adage about thinking like an attacker? Well, guess what? The attacker might be a machine.
Donnie, thank you so much for your practical and informative views, as well as the great research you've done in those areas. And we're definitely looking forward to seeing more of your research come out this year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here with us today. And Tejas, are you here or are we? And if we don't have Tejas, do we have another speaker ready to go? Okay, let's see. Bhargava, did I pronounce that right? Please correct me.
Yeah, Leah, good morning and good evening to all from Davos. This is Bhargava Gorti.
How are you? Are you in Davos this week with the team?
I wish I was there, but I couldn't. I'm calling right now from New Jersey, in the central New Jersey. I live in central New Jersey.
Well, welcome. Glad you could be here with us virtually. So, Bhargava, thanks again for joining virtually. If you can share just a couple-minute introduction about yourself and your background, just for those of us who don't know you.
Sure. Thank you. You know my name, you all Bhargava Gorti. I work for Columbia University. I've been with the university for almost 20 years. Before that, I worked in different industries as a developer and as an ERP developer. But then since 2003, December, I started with Columbia University. I like the place, I like leadership. So stayed there, did my master's in technology management from Columbia University. Was in multiple roles, right, from developer to now senior director in the application security and data protection space. And married last 27 years, 2 kids. One is out of college working in New York City, and the other guy is a son he's a sophomore in the school. So still have to pay my bills.
Well, congrats to the one out of college. That's huge. And in terms of the topics that the team will be discussing this week with the leaders from all around the world in Davos, which one or two or more are of interest to you from your perspective?
See, with my experience, with an unbiased opinion, the thing which really attracts me is the data protection. And one can say, why data protection? Because all the boundaries and all the checks and balances, all these protections are surrounded to protect what? To protect the data. So that's very near to me. And as we know, the data is, two things are growing, humans and data. And the data is growing in leaps and bounds. And definitely people are generating the data. And protecting the data has become the most important aspect. For the world community to look into it, and then they are realizing that how important the data is and how it can play a major role in either making somebody's life or breaking somebody's life. So nation states, companies, entities, non-government organizations, everybody depends on data, and that's very close to me. Data protection is one, it's dearer. At the same time, I would say like application security is another one which is dear, which is very near to me, because it's through the applications, either you generate the data or you distribute the data. So that's one other thing which is very dear to me, like how we protect our applications, which is they are the conduits in collection or distribution of data.
That's, data protection is always like the hot topic, right? Because everyone's still trying to figure out how you can do it better. So thank you for sharing that that's one of your big ones.
Right. And then also to add to that is that we had a GDPR, we have California new laws come in, and we are now US is trying to put in. India has come up with the big PII, basically data protection law. So this will basically, if I have to put in one line, which I put in my signature in office, is our job is to protect the bottom line. Basically, any breach will lead directly impact on the bottom line. So that's what we do, and that's what I love to do, is basically protect the data. And security is not what I always been believer of. It's not restricting access, but giving to the access to the people who need it, because that's why we are in the business. So keeping the business at the forefront, but at the same time say, hey, we have your back. We know you go and do your business, and we will take care of the data protection.
Well said. So looking at this year, right? Because we're just out of the gate in 2023. What are some of the major or big trends that you're seeing?
So one is ransomware, obviously. Either it could be a state-sponsored or it could be malicious attackers. What they are going for, again, the data, in terms of whether they want the data or they're asking for money, or in the form of Bitcoins or crypto, whatever it is. So ransomware is big. The second thing is, people have already covered it, software supply chain management. The reason, the more and more outsourcing, more and more like diverse, in the diverse locations, people are contributing towards one monolithic codes, or they're building the code. But how do you protect that supply chain? Like, for example, giving them tools which help them identifying the vulnerabilities at the development itself, not beyond post-production. That will help in reducing the vulnerabilities. In turn, will prevent, in my opinion, the attacks coming in. So technology perspective wise, what in my thinking is preventive technologies are always, I look forward for those preventive technologies where these technologies prevent any hack or any compromise happening. So these are the top three for me.
Well, Bhargava, we really appreciate you coming and sharing your background, the work that you're doing at Columbia University, and the topics of interest to you, as well as those major trends that we'll see around data protection and other areas. Very much appreciate your insights and for calling in virtually for us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to hearing more from you throughout the year.
Definitely, and it's a pleasure of mine. I'm really, I thank the Purple Book community to basically onboard me, and it's a great initiative, and it's all our duty to protect the world from these bad actors.
Yeah, appreciate you doing that and helping to be part of that community. Thank you so much. Okay, and I think we've got a couple more speakers here. Trying to look at who might be next here. If the next one in line wants to come on up. Is that, should we start here with Sangram? Did I pronounce that correctly? Help me on the pronunciation.
You did that right.
Okay,
Leah.
good.
Thank
Well,
you.
it's good to meet you and see you here. So Sangram, welcome. Where are you calling in from? And then also share a little bit about yourself as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And I'm calling from San Jose, California, the Silicon Valley of USA. And in fact, many of my colleagues are there this week. And unfortunately, I could not be there. I am based out of Silicon Valley for, I guess, 20 plus years now. I lead the cybersecurity function at a company called CDK Global. We are a very unique company. We move more than 2.5% of US GDP on our systems. We are a SaaS product. We are, in fact, a SaaS company before even the word SaaS was introduced. I'm here. I'm delighted to talk about a few things. We can go to specific details as you talk about. But my areas of interest is identity. I think that's one area besides obviously other domains, but identities I'm very passionate about, and more will be glad to talk about those.
Excellent. So Sangram, of the including identity, and then of the topics too that they will be discussing this week at the Cyber Dialogue in Davos. You know, can you expand on that in terms of what you see this year that you think will be the big trends or things that we need to look out for, and or, you know, guidance or advice that you have?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think let me set the stage by stating where I'm coming from. Right. So I spent almost like a decade in various fintech companies like PayPal, Square, and a few others. And I was part of, before I joining CDK, I was part of a startup. We were trying to build the financial identity of the country as a platform we're after. And if you look at the identity as a space, many of these fintechs or even banks have done a good job, right? Obviously, with new devices like iPhone and Android and identity, which is essentially you're carrying with you, you are able to authenticate and essentially tell who you are and the engagement model around that. In fact, iPhone has a very unique space. I believe they will be probably disrupting the financial industry in future, because they got quite a bit of specific data set which helps prevent fraud and various other things like geolocation, things like device ID. You cannot dispute the fact that you are not the one who did not use the card or the device to make a payment, like Face ID and various other things. So they got that pretty well. The financial industry have done it very well. But if you look at the overall space with respect to identity, and we are at Davos, we should talk about the big picture, the world problem as such, right? But if you look at, break it down and look at the three buckets, I would say, right? Business to consumer space, use of devices, use of technology, that has matured a lot, right? Business to business, again, that is at, from a financial standpoint, is at a much better space. But then if you look at human identity, right? Like, think about a world where we have our own identity. We have a global passport, let's say, and you carry yourself wherever you go. And that information is so unique, belong to you, that through any, like even from a travel standpoint, even going and getting the help you need from a medical standpoint, or even financial services, human identity should be so unique, and you should have some sort of data which can define who you are. The counter side of that is the bad guys cannot hide, right? And to do any transactions with respect to identity, you got to tell who you are and how do you want to interact. So I'll take a pause, but this is a space which has to be better, because if you look at the cyber incidents and if you look at the activities we see in our space, it is back primarily, I mean, again, we have to talk about the percentage of it, but it is primarily misuse of identity. It could be a human identity, it could be a machine identity, it could be compromise of some sort. So if you get this problem solved in a way, I believe we'll have a better world.
Sangram, really appreciate you sharing your views there. That is a very big one still that continues to persist. And I don't think we have all the answers yet. So really, we're going to be curious to follow you on the conversations and your guidance that you have throughout the year around this very important topic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And for your colleagues too that are here in Davos, wish them a good week among the discussions in Switzerland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Do we have Mark next?
This is Tejas. Actually, I have.
Oh, good, Tejas. Yes.
Sorry, I've been trying to join, and unfortunately, I'm joining as Val's link. I'm just changing it to my name.
No worries, Tejas. Okay, well, excited that you're here with us. I know we had you earlier, so we're glad that you can make this.
No,
so Tejas.
I was here earlier. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out a link to join. So sorry.
And that's okay. Well, we got you now, so that's what's important.
Yep.
So Tejas, you can you start off just a couple minutes in terms of where you're calling in from, as well as your background, and who you are, just for those who don't know you.
Absolutely. So I'm calling from Dallas, Texas, and my background, I work for Entity Data as a senior director. I manage our global identity access management practice. At the same time, I am also a faculty member at UT Dallas since the last 4 or 5 years, teaching master's students cybersecurity. I'm also on the board of FBI InfraGuard and also mentor to few other college programs. So both as an industry professional for 25 plus years, as well as cyber evangelist in terms of both from a mentorship and faculty point of view. So trying to balance both the worlds.
Excellent. Well, Tejas, I'm also in Dallas, so hopefully I'll see you around the area sometime. But so let's see, in terms of the topics that they will be focusing on this week in Davos, which ones are important and close to you?
So I would say, since I've been hearing a lot of other speakers talk about ransomware and AI, ML and all, I think I'd like to touch up based on my experience with even being the faculty. I would say one of the other aspects which I'd like to draw light on is a lot of it with all these great leaders talking about it, and all of us experienced people we need to address is primarily also about the awareness and education, because it's like you need to start educating people at a much younger age. It's like how you have kids and you try to tell them to protect themselves. Likewise, you have to teach them to protect themselves in this world, which is only getting bigger and better, and also bigger and worse, if you look at it both ways, because the more the devices which get added, more the new technology makes the advancements, the bad guys figure it out much faster than the good guys. So we need to make sure that people do understand that all these new technologies come with a price, and we need to train our new generation, train our existing generation to make sure they are keeping up with these technological advances.
I love that you said awareness and training, because I don't think we can have enough of it, right? Especially with the way the technology is changing and the environment's changing. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's a big topic close to you. In terms of, this year, right? We're still pretty early on. The big and major trends that you see impacting us, and that you'll be focusing on, what are those that you can share with us?
So what I'll be primarily focusing on is, absolutely, we all want to make sure that the ransomware, and every second day you're hearing about a big ransomware attack which happened. So the biggest thing would be to make sure we are prepared to combat all those things. Even if we are not able to stop them, at least we try to close the gap so that if something happens, you're not caught at the wrong side and you're basically waiting 150 days to try and figure out how to fix the problem. Like, that's the reason why I'm so excited about the whole Purple Book concept, because here you're talking about taking the battle inside the application, trying to make sure you're building it right. So even if the attackers figure out more and more ways to attack, but if your application is built solid on a good foundation, then you are basically protecting it intrinsically. Extrinsically, yes, there are other things which you'll have to do, but you are minimizing your risk by building your application right. So I think that's definitely something, as a number of speakers have talked about, how AI and ML, ChatGPT being an example, which everyone's been talking about, right? Means all of a sudden everyone's realizing that ChatGPT, as useful as it can be, or OpenAI as useful as it can be, there are other implications which attackers can figure it out. It can take you on a wrong path, and that can be dangerous. So number of those things we need to look at. Your data, privacy rules are only getting tougher and tougher everywhere, and which it needs to. So the compliance factor, privacy, is always going to be the big thing. IoT, the proliferation of IoT, and the big thing with IoT is, if somebody gets into one of your home devices, they can basically capture your home. So it's important that people understand, and most of it comes from prevention is better than cure. So you need to put the controls in place so that you are protecting from ground zero as compared to when the things have already happened. So I think that's what I would say, that we are more focus should be going back to the basics, building your application right, building your controls right, so you're leaving less room for maneuvering at the end.
Excellent. And, I can see why you've mentioned first the topic of interest for awareness and training, because with everything that you just stated, while it can all be good, it also does pose new implications. So that's why we need so much more of that awareness. So thank you so much, Tejas, for joining us today from Dallas, Texas. And please stay safe out there. And we appreciate you providing your insights and guidance as we look at the year, the next 12 months. Thank you so much.
You.
And Diana Kelly's here next to take over. Thank you so much. How
Hey,
are you?
Leah.
And before I jump, I'll just say hi and hope all is well and Happy New Year.
Great to see you and Happy New Year too. Yeah.
Okay, well, everyone's in good hands here with Diana. I'm going to jump off now, and I know you'll be taking care of the next set of speakers.
Thank you so much, Leah.
Okay, thanks all, and
All
thanks
right.
to the CFF
Take
team.
care. Good to see you.
Bye, you too.
Okay, so I think that our next speaker is going to be Sangram Dash. Is that right? Do we have Sangram here?
Yeah, so Sangram's already done. He came a little early.
Okay. Bhargava Gorti?
Yeah, he's done.
Okay.
So
I'm
the
looking
next
at the
one is
wrong
Mark.
ones.
No, so Mark Lambert is the next one.
Mark Lambert. Okay.
So everybody else before that has come. Mark Lambert is supposed to start at 8:30. So you have 8 minutes. So how about this, Diana? Can you share your perspectives about maybe a little bit about your background and your perspectives about what you think are the top cyber trends in 23?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, so my background is I've actually been in IT professionally for well over 30 years now, and that it started out in the 70s. I got really interested in IT and how systems interconnected. So I've actually been using technology and the quote unquote internet, although it was the DARPANET back in the late 70s, was, it was just the DARPANET. We hadn't had the full internet yet. For a very long time. And I think that, so I've looked at trends coming and going. Sometimes I get a little frustrated that we've forgotten the technical lessons of the past. Someone told me once something that access control wasn't invented till after 2000. And I'm like, well, you tell that to the scientists at IBM who created RACF, which is Resource Access Control Facility, in 1976. So sometimes I get a little frustrated that we forget the past. But you can't deny that how we use technology and the velocity of technology has really changed significantly. And so looking at the trends that I think this year is really the year that AI has moved significantly. And I know there's been a lot of discussion on that, but AI and ML has really moved from, we talk about it, there are bits and pockets of it, to it's become something that everybody understands. The technology didn't make a huge leap with ChatGPT. If you remember Watson winning Jeopardy in, what was it, 2011? I think we're going back a long time. And Watson, the IBM, I used to work at IBM. The IBM system, Watson was able to beat at Jeopardy, and essentially it was doing a lot of things that we're seeing with ChatGPT that make it feel very human. You ask it a question, it can figure out what the answer is, or in case of Jeopardy, you give it an answer, it can figure out what the question is. So now we can say things like, hey, write an essay for me on what late stage capitalism was foreshadowed within the context of The Great Gatsby or something. The system can do that, which is amazing. But we've seen this isn't something, if you've been following in AI and ML, that you've gotten surprised by. The big shift that happened is that now executives can touch it and feel it and can understand that it may have a big impact on them. So I think we're going to see certainly a lot of focus around things like what AI and ML are doing, how they are changing security. With ChatGPT, people are already writing, asking it to write exploit code for them, for example. So I think that that really is going to be, that's really one of the big trends. Another big trend is just as we do the globalization and we've got the impact of regulatory requirements internationally, that's going to be a big push on automation, because we just have too much data, too many moving parts for all of us to be able to handle and manage them on their own. So I think that those are going to be some big ones for the trends coming up. And also just understanding how technology has impacted our entire lives. A few years ago, if I was presenting to a board and I wanted to explain to them some current state of supply chain security, a lot of times I got pushback, take that off your agenda. Why? Do we not have enough time? Because it's a really important point. Take it off your agenda because we don't have a supply chain. Could you imagine any company today saying that? But as recently as 5 years ago, it was not uncommon. If it wasn't a manufacturing company that made widgets, for example, they didn't understand that they were part of a large interconnected supply chain. But we all do now, whether it's the hardware or the software, the combination of both. We've got this massively increased complexity and this need to understand how everything's going to fit as we move forward, and what the providers can do to impact even how we communicate as a world. Twitter is a great example where this year we saw, or last year, apologies, 2023. Last year we saw Twitter change hands. It went from a public company to a private company, and essentially a single owner with Elon Musk. Now, it has been called the world's town square, the meeting place for the world. There have been communications on there in times of great civil unrest around the world. But this was not, the world didn't own Twitter. Twitter was a public company from the US. Now it's a private company owned by essentially one person. How do we feel about our technology that we all rely on being owned by maybe one or two people, or owned by corporations? So I think these are going to be some pretty big, weighty conversations that we're going to have as we see that technology has truly become something that all of us depend on for a variety, whether it's communication in time of war, or it's just to Zoom to your friends on your birthday. It's something that is embedded into all of our lives. So keeping it secure and available is obviously critical. But then what does that look like from an international regulatory standpoint? What does that look like from a quote unquote ownership standpoint? I think those points are going to become big questions. It's not the same as somebody who's managing a SIM trying to figure out, the configuration, but these are big, meaty, global, conversations that I think we as a community, a global community, need to be having, which is why I think it's great what's been going on during this dialogue here. And I think are we still waiting for the next speaker? Is that right?
Yeah, Diana. So the next speaker is scheduled to come at 8:30.
Okay.
Mark is joining in a moment. Yeah, sorry, he will join. They all join as Val Mukherjee, and then they change their names because everybody's joining with the default link.
Yes, I know. Yeah, again, see, there you go. There's a great example of technology with, sometimes the limits on technology are there because they were set, not because they can't be changed, but we all have to play within those rule sets. I was an admin so long ago. I still remember the time, and people are going to laugh, but my system crashed and I had to go figure out why. And it was because the president of the company, no, it was the CEO of the company, not the president, the CEO of that company had sent an 8 megabyte attachment to an email to everybody at the company. And 8 megs, you're all like, yes, so. Well, now imagine it's 1994 and 1995, and what it did was it filled up the server went to capacity, the actual storage of the server went to capacity, and my system went down over something that minor. And I remember the CEO saying, well, that's a ridiculous limit. Why is that a limit? Why are we limited by that? So the technology at the time, having a 1 gig hard drive was super exciting. But now we know that is, we have 1 gig, we have 50 gig on a tiny little drive. Okay, I think Mark is here. Hello, Mark, welcome.
Hi, Diana, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. And please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. An absolute pleasure to be, able to contribute to this amazing meeting that's going on today. I just wish I was there in person, but we'll work on that for next year. So, so thank you very much. My name is Mark Lambert. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at ArmorCode. I'm an active member of the Purple Book community, and really happy to join the group here. And I can see PK is also on joined as well. Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, Mark, doing good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Okay, so PK, if you could, I think your name is showing up as Val. So just in case the folks out there don't know, if you could introduce yourself with your official name and also what you do, please. Thank you.
Sure, we'll do that. Diana, I'm not sure what's going on with the Zoom link, but hey, folks, this is Prabhat. I go by PK. I'm the head of security and trust at
PK, I think that you hit mute. Okay.
Okay. Did you hear the first part, or should I start over?
Yes, please start over.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Hey, folks, this is Prabhat. I go by PK. I'm the head of security and trust at TripActions. For those of you who are not familiar with TripActions is an end-to-end online travel and expense management SaaS platform with over 9,000 customers and 3,000 employees. I run the security function here with my primary objectives is to kind of make sure that we meet our security and privacy obligations to our customers, regulators, stakeholders, and investors. Prior to my current role, where I've been for a couple of years, I was with Adobe for close to 9 years. One of the founding members of the security team at Adobe, and was part of the cloud transformation and the digital transformation journey for Adobe as the business grew from $30 billion to $300 billion. Had the unique privilege to kind of set up the security program to for that scale. Prior to that, was doing consulting with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Started my career as a security engineer, career security guy. Being active in the startup and kind of VC ecosystem lately, advising a few startups, and been doing this for like 16 plus years. And it's a pleasure to be here.
That's great to have you both. So Mark, I was wondering if you could start us off, as you're thinking about these big picture, what global security and how we need to address it. What's on your radar right now?
Yeah, and I was looking at the agenda from the summit this week, and really, one of the things jumped out at me. It's look, we're going into a very difficult year. We had obviously the economic turmoil that we're going through is meaning that organizations are having to make some very difficult decisions. But at the same time, we all know from a software perspective that software delivery still keeps having to happen, and it has to happen quicker than it's ever happened before. So I think, one of the key sessions that kind of jumped out at me was actually two related topics. One was the ability to be able to accelerate your software delivery while still delivering safe and secure, right? So keeping up with DevSecOps. And the other was this intersection between software security, or should I say application security, and traditional or infrastructure security, and kind of bringing those two worlds together. And I think we're going to see this year, as we look at the trend, we're going to see more and more organizations trying to do more with less. The reality is, unfortunately, that teams have been reduced. Budgets are harder, tighter than ever before. So one of the things that I foresee is that a lot more people are going to be leveraging automation, but smart automation. How can I do not just massive volumes of ticket creation, but how can I really target the work? So I'm not just automating a tidal wave of information. I'm trying to automate and strategically focus the team. So I think really that was the thing that, as I was looking at the agenda, kind of like jumped out at me. And the thing that I really think we're going to see a lot this year is do more with less.
Yeah, do more with less. And PK, can we automate without exposing ourselves to risk? How are we going to be able to do that?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, Diana. So I agree with Mark in a lot of ways. So this year is going to be a rough year. That's all indications are showing in that direction. So as a practitioner, to answer your question, yeah, it's very critical that we don't expose additional attack surface as we, kind of leverage on these automation, security engineering, AI, ML capabilities. We need to make sure that we don't expose additional attack surface. But at the same time, I feel that as a somebody who runs a security team in a substantially large organization, I feel that the theme for the year, even for the security teams, are going to be operational excellence and adding maximum business value, right? That's basically, I'm using the terms to kind of summarize whatever Mark mentioned. I think gone are the days where you can just have a very risk-focused kind of mindset, but the business leaders who are managing security leaders are expecting operational excellence and how are you actually adding maximum value to the business. So that's a theme that I'm consistently noticing based on my conversations with practitioners and what's happening in my organization as well.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I'd agree. I agree with that. I think you summarize it perfectly as operational excellence, right? It's not just, doing the job and kind of like working on the numbers. It's like, are we executing as a business? Are we executing as a team? More and more when I'm talking to, application security leaders, they'll use the phrase that, the development team of their customer, right? And, the only way that you can achieve true excellence as a software delivery organization is if everybody's moving in the right direction. I think, you touch upon it perfectly there. It's that working synergy as in synchronization, working together for a common goal.
Yeah, and also one other piece to add there is the impact, right? What impact are you producing? I think all security teams have been kind of challenged in a unique way to articulate the impact, business impact from all the work that goes on and the budget that is spent by the security teams. Yeah.
So, around that point, impact, and really as we talk to software delivery, because I feel like software gets the short end of the stick. Years ago, somebody, I read an article that said that there were more lines of code in the average new car than in Windows and Microsoft Windows. Selling us that our cars rate and we know that now. I think people have kind of, although that number still, I think, a little bit mind blowing, but that it really level sets the extreme importance of resilient, robust software. But software testing, spending time to do requirements, this is something that we still are challenged to explain to executives why it's important. Mark, how can we get PK's operational excellence? How can we communicate that, especially around resilient software?
Yeah, and actually, you're talking to exactly the area where I've been working for the last 20 years. So I actually worked for a while in the safety critical industry, focusing on automotive software specifically. So it's something I've got a lot of background in, and actually it's an area where it's been growing in sophistication and growing in visibility. So there was the Prius hack, goodness me, it must be close to a decade ago now. But basically, to do the Prius hack, they had to take the car apart. There was then the Jeep hack, which was actually a firmware update. But then once they'd done that, because the Jeep was connected to the internet, they could control the brakes and the steering. Kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
And then recently, the back end of last year, there was an attack through SiriusXM where there was an API that took in the VIN number, which anybody knows that you can find a VIN number by just looking at a vehicle, because it's there by the window. If you gave it the VIN number, you could actually access the internal systems of the vehicle through the SiriusXM. Now, these doors have all been closed, but the visibility is the key thing, and we're aware of it as an industry. The way to make it matter to the business is to put it in terms of the business. So understanding what the risk is to the organization, not just a number, but understanding what happens to the business if this thing is compromised. What happens to the business if we slow down delivery, which is another piece. You got the trade-off, the speed of delivery, versus the secure delivery. And you can balance these, but you have to put it in the context that the business cares about. You have to be able to talk about this particular application is business critical, it's customer facing, it has PII. If we have a breach on this, we're going to fundamentally impact our operations. we're also going to be having regulatory fines, and then you've obviously got the bad press, so to speak. All of these things are things that we need to, as security leaders, advise our leadership team on so that they can make the best decisions possible. One of the things we should always remember is that security's role is an advisory role to the leadership of the organization. And the best way you can advise that is on what the risk represents to the business. And you know, Prabhat, I know that you live this, so you know, be interested in hearing your take.
Yeah, PK.
Yeah. So yeah, you have a lot of points, Mark. But I'll just take it one step further. I mean, I agree with all the stuff that you mentioned. I think default secure is the new theme, right? I think if you kind of inject the right level of tooling and scanning in your STL development life cycle and automate the signals that are coming from these kind of scans, and then self-service that to the developer and provide instructions to actually mitigate some of those risks. I think that's where I see a lot of modern, tech companies are going. Where, I mean, of course, you cannot eliminate the role of the practitioner to design all these workflows in a very, very appropriate, risk-appropriate manner. You need the expertise of the practitioner. But once you get this right, then that gets you a lot of credibility from business leaders, right? You are not looked at as someone. I mean, the point that I'm trying to get across is we need to get away from this world where you need a practitioner to make a decision. I think that decision-making science, to the extent possible, for all the routine stuff or the repeatable stuff, should be automated, right? So that's the default secure and shifting SDL to the left on the next level. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Mark? Do you think that is that achievable?
I think it is. I mean, we have, a lot of, practices already in place. We've got a lot of leaders that know how to do this. Prabhat and I have talked about this kind of thing before, as well as other members of the Purple Buck. And we know how to solve this problem. So yes, we can do it. We just have to really, as an industry as a whole, learn and take those learnings on board. I mean, I still see organizations today where a security team will walk into the leadership, conversation and say, look at these thousands of vulnerabilities that the development team have. Look at those bad guys not doing their job right. Look, I've saved the company because I've told you about all the problems. Come on, guys, we got to work. The only way you can shift it left is by enabling the development team, not more carrot, less stick. That's kind of like my thought on that.
Couldn't agree more. PK, what do you think?
No, I'm like 100%. That's why I was smiling. I mean, those conversations go sideways big time. So, and then
usually what happens is the development team go, that's not my data. And now you've just invalidated your entire position because you've walked into the room with either data that's old or data that doesn't belong to that team, and now you're all the way on the back foot. Where it's much better to be proactively collaborating with the team and saying, "Look, we want to shift left security. Development team don't want to deliver insecure applications. They don't want to do the wrong thing. They want to do the right thing. So what you want to do is to say, let's collaboratively look at, hey, before I go into the leadership meeting, I got these 5,000 violations over here. Is this right? What do you think we should do?" And get their buy-in. And now if that buy-in isn't enough, that's when you escalate. So there's one organization that I work with, and it's like, yeah, the development team have committed to fixing, I think it was something like two vulnerabilities a month or something. I'm like, are you kidding me, right? That's completely the other direction. So there has to be a bit of a negotiation, but where you're able to articulate to the development team, it's like, it's not a number, it's a risk, right? We've got these things are critical problems because they're exploited vulnerabilities in the wild. Let's kind of work on figuring out how we do that, and let's present a plan together to leadership. Sorry, I'm on a soapbox, but yeah, there you go.
No, it's a good soapbox to be on. I think we're wrapping our time, but I'd like to start with you, PK, and then Mark. Just what do you hope that we can kind of at least start to close the book on and not have to continue talking about in security next year? What do you kind of hope we can address this year and the coming years and move on?
Yeah. So Yeah, I think it's my opinion around this is it's a mindset shift for practitioners and leaders, right? Where we've been very, very, very risk focused. Historically, this profession has been very, very risk focused, which is good. That needs to continue, right? That is table stakes. You can't even have a job if you don't have the risk mindset, right? But then that business mindset needs to be inculcated in a lot of areas, right? That piece is missing. I mean, some folks get it through school, but some folks get it through working, right? Or some folks get it through conversations like this. So it just depends, right? So I think that is the gap we need to bridge in terms of how do security teams communicate their work, articulate the impact to the business, and then actually keep business in mind before thinking about risk, right? So that's
so we no longer have to say it in the language of the business. We'll just security people innately understand that's how we communicate. So I love that. I love that, PK. Mark.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. And you know, it's not just for the business, but also for the organization. And I know I'm a little on my soapbox with the developer collaboration, but I think, you know, that's the thing that we have to move away from, this siloed security team that's up in this, you know, in a world where we're not collaborating. We've got to get that collaboration. And I think, you know, to your point, Prabhat, it's like making sure that we are communicating to leadership and making sure that we're communicating together, I think, is the thing that I really hope we can make some progress on this year. I'm not naive to think that it'll be fixed, but let's hope there's some progress.
I love that. Yeah, progress, not perfection. Thank you. This has just been such a great conversation. Thank you so much, PK, for being here. Thank you, Mark. We're so grateful.
Thank you, Diane. Pleasure. Very pleasure being involved. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, so next I think we're going to bring Jimmy Lee. Jimmy, are you ready to join?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's great to have you here. Jimmy, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Jimmy Lee. I've been hanging around the Purple Book community here for about a year and a half or so, right after the inception. I've been working with and learning from, laughing with, solving problems with the kill now for a couple of years. So it's been very, very fun. I help collaborate on the Purple Book ebook here. It says I needed to start my video. There we go. So, and then prior to that, I did about 9 years at Facebook Meta, head of security applications, another 4 years at Microsoft security, both very deep in attack surface analysis and binary analysis, as well as PK operations and global facilities with highly sensitive data and assets, and then about 9 years at Boeing, full stack engineering.
Okay, so you got a deep application security background. What are your thoughts, and very active leader in Purple Book community? What are your thoughts on the state of software security today?
Well, you know, the cool thing about, you know, social media is more information is at the hands of people than ever before. And the ability to be able to interpret that data, our ability to reach people now through social media, just snippets of videos, advertising through Google, through LinkedIn, through Facebook, Meta, Instagram, right? It's just unparalleled, right? So you get this sense that people kind of are starting to understand cyber is a big thing. You know, it's starting to become very disruptive to the average, you know, citizen or person residing, you know, within the US for one, but then globally elsewhere. I know more about the US than I do other nations in terms of how it interacts with directly to people. So I'll probably lean that way, but it's the same problem everywhere else. And so people are starting to like, my power's out. Why is my power out? Somebody attacked the substation, right? You know, and so it's like, wait. Somebody hacked that car, right? Or my refrigerator, or somebody took out my printer. And so now the average person is starting to be impacted by cybersecurity in a way that, you know, is never before so direct. And so when you relate that now to the corporate setting, you know, to business, whether it be a small business owner or a large enterprise, people have some resemblance of awareness. I think so. I think we've solved the awareness problem, you know, help people become more cognizant, maybe a little bit cautiously afraid of what could potentially happen as a means of risk to help them take action. But I think we're now starting to shift into this phase of giving people more context around the risk. around the dangers of what can happen with cybersecurity, and then starting to kind of pull them along into this awareness context now, take action mode, right? And so a lot of the businesses that I work with now, that I do a lot of advising, CTO work, a lot of businesses, a lot of corporations and enterprises, they understand they have a problem, but a lot of them sometimes see the solutions as too far out, too difficult, too complex, not simple, as and a means of I'm going to have to take a further loss in order to try to solve the problem. And so in that regard, you start to have these deep conversations around, okay, but the risk of not doing something is far greater than the revenue loss of shifting the team to start to focus more on application security. And so I think that over the next few years, hopefully we start to infuse more context into the more common understanding, because I'm starting to see people take business training, but if you're like me, and if they give you a way to challenge test out of your corporate training, you're going to sit there and go through 10 corporate training sessions in 30 minutes versus take the full 5 hours that they wish you would take and watch all the videos, right? And so people are starting to get immune and desensitized to corporate business training. And so yes, they get the cyber training, but how that applies to everyday life and their everyday business, or for developers that are being tracked by the lines of code that they write in terms of their performance, their bonuses, right? That meets expectations, do not meet expectations. So now you're telling them that they have to slow down so their performance metrics take a hit for security of the company, but security is not their job. Their job is to be an engineer. So now with this context, we can try to help them understand what those risks are. And as more and more students come out of college more aware of cybersecurity, I think that this differentiation between cyber and engineering, cyber and application security and engineering, writing code and application security will start to merge, and it'll start to be more common knowledge on how to write secure, data privacy protected code right the first time, so that the security teams and the security architects and the security engineers don't have to go there and slap them on the wrist and say, hey, you should have known better. Rewrite your code. They're like, hey man, nah, that feature's done. I'm on to my next one.
Yeah. Jimmy, I love that. And, you've been doing this for so long. I have tried in the past, I tried to explain Bohm's law to CEOs, because as you said, we need to slow down, right? And very often the developers, they're going to do what they're incented to do. If you're incenting them by lines of code or by functionality and not security, why would they focus on security? Right? So that's kind of a top-down part. But how do we educate the top on the importance of it? Because like I said, I've tried to explain Bohm's laws, the financial importance of shifting left, but I still have never felt that I've really broken through to some executives with that it really is cheaper. And to the point that you might get a kick out of this, I was explaining to one CEO as we were implementing a software development lifecycle that was more secure for a company. I said, this is taking too long. It's costing too much money. And, I again tried to explain, and he said, well, what if they just don't test any of the code? Just write it, put it out there, and it's going to change so quickly that we're going to basically run between the raindrops of attackers. What would you say to that? How do we address that pushback?
It's difficult. It's difficult. I will say that I at my time at Microsoft and studying, at least Steve Littner just retired and passed the baton to Matt Tomlinson, right? A lot of people don't really understand where some of this, the language from the SOC certifications and the ISO 27001 certifications came from.
Yes.
Microsoft dumped millions and millions and millions of dollars early days, partially because it's kind of their fault, like PCs and servers were everywhere, right? So they had a responsibility, but they dumped so much money into research. A lot of the context came out of this, right? And I was blessed to be on the teams, and one of my responsibilities was attack surface analysis, binary analysis, and some of the kernel communications that were happening lower on into the architecture stack. And so we had this thing called, as you said, SDLC, Security Development Lifecycle. So I wrote some of those contents and pushed out some of those tools to the open web, open source them for everybody else to use, built off of Mike Howard's security tools tool set, right? And it was hard because in Microsoft, you had to pass through the SDLC unless your SVP opted out. And they pushed out a feature, because there might have been one or two different blocking bugs. And so everybody saw it as an impediment, right?
Right.
And so back in those days, there weren't degrees, there weren't certifications. And so the only way to really incentivize the engineers was helping them understand how they were going to become a better engineer and how it was actually going to make them more money.
Yeah.
And so if you help them understand, hey, this is going to help you write better code, you don't actually have to slow down if you allow me to help coach you on these different facets. You can write it the first time, like, don't divide by 0, right? Some of those very simple things in the code that they can be such a stickler. And so sometimes I think at the engineering level, it's easier to kind of help them understand how it's going to benefit them personally and benefit the company. And they can find a way where they're not impacted. I mean, it's just more and more and more. At the leadership level, I think you have to use case studies. And I think that's where you have to say, okay, yes, we won't call people, I don't know how wide this recording is going to go. And it kind of sucks to call out my, your CISO friends that are going to have to deal with the blowback of this person said something in video. But
you don't need to
there are
name
companies
names
out there, right, that
okay.
Specifically ignore the guidance, just like you said, puts out the feature, and the loss and the reputational impact of the company was so great that it took everybody, the entire executive team, the entire board. Right now, your loss of revenue is so hard. Right now, we're having these financial impacts through inflation and through other economical and socio-political and global economic factors that kind of drive a shift of business. But in those times when it's good, and then you have these major financial disruptors, that starts to help you kind of really understand, okay, maybe it's better to take that loss of speed now and then be able to come in later with another feature. I think the other thing to do with some of these key execs is having this conversation of, do you always have to be first? Is being first now worth the loss of financial impact through reputation and through poor hygiene? As well as, I think you've been around engineering for a long time. I'm assuming I haven't looked you up on LinkedIn, but everybody understands agile and iteration 0, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just have to figure out where you're going to take your tech debt. And so as a leader, if you can, forecast the next few years, you can say, okay, I'm going to take my hit here. And then you can start to set a culture throughout the rest of the organization that says, okay, we're all going into iteration 0. And I've seen a couple of leaders do this for entire departments before. And it really helps with the cultural impacts of saying, okay, everybody's performance now is going to align with iteration 0. Now we have a few ops folks, but for everybody else, it's okay to focus on tech debt. It's okay to focus on security budgets. It's okay for us to kind of retool ourselves. It's okay for us to get some training, to bring some people in. We're going to take this concerted time and we're going to shift. But what that also does as an organization, especially for culture, is, okay, now everybody's been trained. Expectations now have shifted. We've had our iteration 0. Now, no excuses. We need everybody to align here. And if you're not aligning here, then that's a different conversation that we need to have.
It's just such an amazing insight. Thank you so much. This has been incredible. Anything you want to leave the audience with? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just say that I saw somebody in a previous talk about the security professional or the security architect or engineer or the person that's smart about security helping you make these decisions. I'd say that is a key contributor fact. I think right now with the financial impactors, getting a good advisor or hiring or elevating somebody within your organization that is smart here and giving them a platform is going to be key. It's not as hard as it looks. We're all making tough decisions right now. So now is the perfect time, since we're in loss season for business, take your loss now. Use this time, use this opportunity to retool your organization and your company and move it in a different direction. Everybody's listening to board, everybody. So now's the time to take this as an opportunity to really seed in. Let's fix our security now. And let's take that loss in terms of time or speed or feature developments for the better of the organization.
That is such great advice, and completely agree. If I have had that pushback of it's gonna extend our dev cycle. Well, you have the opportunity to learn. What ultimately happens is it speeds up the cycles, but you have to do that work in upfront. So I love this. You're saying this is a great time. Get that work done. Thank you so much.
It's exponential. You always catch up. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay, so now we've got Gopi Ramamurthy joining us. Welcome, Gopi. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Good morning, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Diana. And so I'm Gopi Ramamurthy, and I've been in the cyber security industry for more than 15 years. And I work for financial institutions as well as the healthcare and life sciences. I work for Pfizer, managing one of the business units for the cybersecurity. And I also manage 2 other business units in Pfizer down the line. And we were moving $350 billion within those 3 business units. I manage cybersecurity. In the life sciences, I work for Viva, and then we did multiple products globally, cyber secure as well as compliance.
Okay.
So I've been active as the multiple organization as well. Back to you, Diana.
Oh, thank you. Also joining us right now is Rohit Parchuri. Rohit, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Diana. Hey, Gopi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Yeah, my name is Rohit Parchuri. I'm a CISO and Senior Vice President for Cybersecurity at a company called Yext. I'm primarily responsible for all things cybersecurity, audits, certifications, regulatory compliance. There's an element of privacy that also falls into that, but I pretty much partner with our general counsel on some of the major initiatives there. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, great. Thanks you both for joining us. So Gopi, we've been talking about the state of cyber, the impacts globally. What's on your radar for this year?
Great question. So the leaders before me touched upon various very important key points. I would like to focus on 3 things. Number 1, what is present? What is the what is the one that is continuous disruption to cybersecurity? The topic here is ransomware. So the hardware manufacturers are building the endpoints, and then software providers building the applications. And there should be a connection between those 2. And we have been trying to secure endpoints from this application side as a piecemeal solution, right? There are application security, there's a endpoint security, but still we are getting multiple attacks through ransomware. So we need to think through how we connect our software development and think through how our hardwares are designed, like POS systems, our laptops, our connected devices, how we can minimize the data to the endpoint, how we can avoid the disruption at the endpoint. Ransomware going to continue, but how we can application providers as well as hardware manufacturers can reduce the data footprint, the longevity of the data, the removable of endpoints, adding new endpoints, how we can re-engineer the complete endpoint spectrum. We need to start thinking through. I think that's going to start in 2023, and then slowly we should have better alignment between software manufacturers and hardware manufacturers to provide better resiliency through the endpoint destruction.
Okay.
The second topic, go ahead.
No, just heavy focus on endpoint, yeah.
Right. The second point I'd like to see what's coming up in 2023 and beyond is the continuous privacy regulations and data localization requirements. So more and more privacy regulations are coming, and the governments across the globe, they want data localization to be in place for national security, for business security, and so on. So what it means is we have to think through how we build our data storage systems across the globe, and how our applications can access certain data and cannot access certain data. When it has to transfer a data from a country to another country or a region to another region, there should be approval, the technical approval process in place, as well as the monitoring should be in place. This is not only to meet regulations, also to bring visibility, also to bring better security, right? So if you think through service mesh made a connection between one application to another application, one endpoint to another endpoint. It brought some visibility. So we need to think through the same thing, how we can comprehensively handle the data localization and data privacy regulations through application, not only through process, not only through education, not only through legal, not only for GDPR, but we have to engineer our applications to have these regulations as well as the security met. That's the second point. That's going to start in 2023 and go beyond. So there have been the PETs, the privacy enhancement technologies, but it's going to take a new shape from 2023 and go on. The third piece I like to bring today is the data-centric zero trust. So John Kinderwag coined zero trust 10 or 11 years back, but the whole concept of zero trust was down the line, it was misunderstood. It was in the sense it's taken as a application security, host security, endpoint security, access control. But if you hear again and again from the leaders, from John Kinderwag, it's about data-centric security. So if we need to implement a zero trust, I would always look at the data first, start building the layer, and then connecting that layer to all other domains of the security. So that's a grand vision of zero trust, and it starts with a data-centric security.
Thank you. Wonderful comments and really great points on the zero trust. It can be a confusing term, but it's about data-centric security and managed trust. Thank you, Gopi.
Thank you.
Rohit, what's on your radar?
Yeah, let me take this is great, and thanks, Gopi, for all the insights. Let me take a completely diametrical opposite viewpoint in terms of the topic I want to discuss about. It's about the cyber staffing and the cyber workforce in general. I'm sure most of the leaders, attending now and who are in this space have been struggling with the trials and tribulations that we had to face in terms of just the general cyber staffing, both within the company and also how we're trying to retain talent and also hire for new talent. And I've been going through this myself for the past 2 years as we're trying to build up the team and also build up the program alongside. One thing we hear quite often is the demand and supply. So there is a lot of demand for cyber roles, and just given how exponentially fast we've grown as an industry, and it's also said that supply is not meeting the demand, where I think it's true to some extent, but not entirely. I think we're also looking at this from a different perspective. And for me, what I've seen and what I've experienced is that demand exists for sure, and supply exists too. It's just that maybe we're not looking at it the right way, or maybe we're not looking at it in the right place. What I mean by that is I think fundamentally we're kind of misaligning the demand and supply for cybersecurity. And the reason is cybersecurity is still a very recent happening. Like, we've only been around for maybe like a decade and a half or something like that. So I think what we do more often than not is replicate the other departments in terms of how we want to hire people. Engineers, analysts, intelligence analysts, or just the typical, the directors and managers and whatnot. Like, you kind of build a ladder, you kind of build a program around it. But I feel maybe the way cyber itself is architected is different. It's not like a typical software engineering team or a typical IT engineering team. We're differently placed, we're differently viewed in a company. So I think we should look at it from that perspective. And we also kind of conflate many things into a single role. As I was going through listings myself, we ask for an entry-level engineer, but we ask too much of an entry-level engineer, which is not right. Sometimes I also see, like, if somebody's trying to break into security, I think we should be asking the right questions. We should be setting the right expectations, and I don't see that often. I'm just trying to be, very open and honest here. This is what I do see in the industry, and I'm not saying everybody does this. I'm not trying to stereotype, but I do see there's a pretty big element of what exactly our expectations of an entry-level engineer should be. So definitely trimming that down, make it more specific, and make it prescriptive as possible, because we describe the roles, but we don't prescribe it. And I think prescriptive, in other words, mean that these are the specific technical or non-technical or business expectations for that matter. And this is where we expect you to come in and, take the baton and get moving. So I think those are a few things, but also I would like to touch on a few elements on how, I've kind of built my own program, and this has worked out for me. So hopefully this would also help other leaders, think about this from this viewpoint. Essentially, we are risk advisors, and we are reporting on risk, we're advising on risk, and also I think we're prioritizing risk to some extent. So although we talk about there's a cybersecurity, yes, I'm not discounting that there's a technical cybersecurity element, and I think we should still hire for those, like pen testers or super technical, engineers, where we still need some element of technicality within their roles, but there's also a side which is often we don't put too much attention on that, which is a risk element. So I think looking for ways to leverage the risk element, and making sure that you do have a component or a discipline that goes more into risk and rather not just into technical cybersecurity, I think that would definitely fare better, and it's going to be beneficial in the long term. And also reevaluate your cyber roles. Talk to your managers or directors, depending on where you sit, and ask them, or ask yourself also, to think about how do you want to, specifically talk about the goals for your company and for your cyber program. Then take that risk element, and that's how you translate that into a role, rather than simply going about engineers and analysts. I think you need a senior leader for sure. Like this would be mostly applicable to startups, or at least companies that do not have a well-established cyber program. Is try to make sure you have an executive alignment. In other words, like a CISO or a senior leader who can talk cybersecurity in a business perspective, in a business language, with your board, with your operating and executive team. So that's where you're building the narrative. And then you bring it down and make sure you build the bridges and sustain the relationships with your peer parties. And this could mean your engineering departments, your IT departments, things of that nature. And then I think one of the key points that I've kind of learned this the hard way, but I think this would be beneficial, is work on the process efficiencies and models for execution in a right perspective, because that's going to reduce the human count. And this could actually help you fare better, because you have repeatable processes that could easily be handled by the systems and process. So you essentially have a process automation. Ultimately, one additional point would be look for extensions and look for leverage anything that you could extend your team. Any place you can extend your team. This could be like, I know there's a big focus on MDRs and MSSPs and cyber insurers. I think there's a benefit to that, and which is where I think you can think about the marginal value that you would get, from your team members, rather, translate that into the external focus and make sure your MDRs and MSSPs are actually doing that for you, and you focus on the maximum value, which is, bring that, translate that, and put that into business. So yeah, I spoke about quite a few things, but let me stop there.
Well, it's fabulous. This is incredible from all the way from data-centric focus, Gopi Ramamurthy, thank you so much, to optimizing your teams so that you can optimize your technology and security. Thank you, Rohit Parchuri. We're so grateful that both of you could join us today, and we thank you so much for being here.
Of course, glad to be
Thank
here.
you.
Okay, thank you. All right, joining us next is Brooke Schoenfield. Hi, Brooke, welcome.
Hi, Diana. Nice to be here. Thank you very much to the Purple Book and the Cyber Future Foundation for inviting me. Quite an honor. I'm very flattered that anyone wants to hear anything from me, but yes.
No, we're so lucky to have you here today. Would you mind introducing yourself a little to the audience?
Not at all. Like you, I've been kicking around high tech for a long time, maybe too long. Mid 80s, I started programming, realized I had a good feel for it, and that led to ultimately becoming a chief designer at a little software house, and I had a director of software development roles in there somewhere, and did all of that, and because I had a lot of design experience, I was really lucky. Cisco said, we want you in our security. And I was doing security at that point because I wrote TCP/IP stacks, and everything was about the network in those days, back in the late 90s. And so they grabbed me and wanted me to become a security architect there. And interestingly, they offered me what they thought at the time, this is around 2000, 2001, was a downgrade. Could you become our very first application security architect? And that really sets the tone of that time. You'll remember that, Diana, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
That it was all about networks and endpoints, and who cared about, well, we have to write some coding guidelines and get people to do a little better, right? And who would have guessed that my team would be the biggest team in 4 years at Cisco InfoSec, right? And application security would take off. And since then, I've technically led application security or software security a couple times at Cisco, a couple of other companies you may have heard of like Intel, McAfee, Autodesk. And today I'm the CTO for a little consultancy that specializes in startups, which brings me, that's where I want to go, but we'll let Sean introduce himself. And then I'd like to, and I should mention that I teach for the University of Montana. That's where I am. And I also have written or co-authored 6 books on software security. So, I just tried to put some of my stuff out there that I thought might be useful.
That's the same thing. I'm only at 2 co-authored books, but yeah, same thing. You try and put back some knowledge. Yeah. It's a labor of love though, writing a tech book. Sean Davis, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Could you be muted maybe? No, I think Zoom is, so I don't know if this will help, but sometimes Zoom doesn't like my microphone unless I just go into the settings and go off that microphone to anything else and back on, and then it's happy. So I don't know if that'll help you.
Yeah, it seems to lose my microphone and my camera from time to time. And I have to.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Did that trick work?
Gotta love Zoom.
Software. Okay. Welcome again, Sean Davis.
What an awesome welcome and an amazing opportunity here. I'll start with telling you just a little bit about myself pretty quickly. I've got about 25 years in this experience around this industry. It's been a pretty crazy journey. I started with the Marine Corps, then worked my way through government, automotive, MSP, hospitality, fintech, and now really digging into data and analytics markets. But my primary focus is really just on building industry level security communities, right? And really strengthening a value proposition around security at the executive and board levels of organizations, and then helping those organizations really educate their staff on how to build a successful company security team and cultures that really drive that, right? Understanding why we are what we are and making sure that aligns to the mission and vision of the organization.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so let's get to so Brooke, you have seen a lot in your career. I'm wondering, as we get to 2023, what do you think that we're doing right, especially in application security, and what's an opportunity for us to do better?
Well, that's a great question, because that leads me, and I think you touched on this, that it's global. And I want to set some context, if you don't mind. It won't take long with this, and then I'll answer your questions.
Sure.
But I think it's really global, and some numbers really brought it home for me. I mean, World Economic Forum estimates that at least 60% of our GDP, our economic activity, is dependent on software. And when I say that, I want to remind us that it's not just people sitting in what my friends in the majority world call the minority world in big corporations. You know, a herdsman out in the Sahel has a cell phone today, and they're going and looking and seeing what the weather's going to be and planning on that. They're also dependent on software. Billions of people are dependent on software being correct. Okay, set that as one context. And at the same time, there are, Evans Data estimates, about 27 million programmers on planet Earth. Now, it doesn't really matter whether that number is accurate to what, you know, plus or minus a few million. It doesn't really matter, because only maybe, if we're generous, maybe 5 million of those work in the very same corporations where they know about software security, and they have some kind of program, excuse me, and have some kind of access to tools and techniques around software security. Okay, which leaves us maybe 20 million programmers writing vulnerabilities right now, not because they're stupid or they're bad or anything like that. That's not what I want to say, but just simply because it's hard, it's complex. Software security is a multi-domain, multi-discipline, and multivariate problem. It exists in a lot of levels, front to back, side to side, from the data up through the operating system to the application code. You know, and networks are still involved, because old vulnerabilities don't die. They just wait until we forget about them. And, you know, I saw a Smurf attack not too long ago. You'll remember Smurf attack from when I started studying this stuff back in 1998. And so, you know, the problem here is it's complex, and we've got a lot of people who aren't playing. So global, you said it when you were speaking about an hour ago. It's a global problem. And how do we address that global problem? I think, you know, all due respect, we do have to think about our organizations. I have to think about my clients' software security, or they won't pay me. They won't be happy, right? This is, you know, I have to make a living just as everyone else does. At the same time, being a little older has allowed me to start thinking about the broader context, and I have that luxury. And so I've been focusing. And so when we come back to trends, we're going to keep seeing attackers use leverage at an alarming rate, and it's going to be hurting people, real people, whether they're hurting sheep or goats on the Sahel or sitting in an office someplace. And that, you know, that's very, very, very important for us to think about globally. I believe here at Davos, this is a global problem.
Yes.
And we've got a whole lot of programmers writing vulnerabilities, not to mention that all of us can make mistakes when we're programming, right? I mean, no, I never wrote any bugs like heck, right? You know, really stupid mistakes. And so, you know, any of us can do that and introduce a vulnerability. And our tools aren't quite sufficient to the task. And there's some computer science I won't go into about that you probably, the people on this call probably know. But, you know, if ask me later, if you want to know the computer science behind that, we can find bugs, but we can't prove something's correct. And that's a real problem. And so we have this disparity between attacker just taking leverage and doing things with it, and our ability, the complexity of the ability to protect. And I think what I'd like to see, so the trend is more of the same, maybe more. And at the same time, I really, really resonate with a lot of speakers talking about, can we get away from security being the special people on the side, commanding everyone to behave, which they're behaving. They just don't know necessarily what to do. And that's a very different mindset. And I see Tanya has joined, and I'm sure you'll speak to this, I hope, Tanya, when you get a chance. But it's not because they're dumb or making mistakes, you know, it's hard. And so I would like to see a real awareness at a broader level happen around really supporting developers to bring security in, just like performance or scalability or any of the other things. That's where I'd like to see what I've called developer-centric security, but call it what you will, call it shift left, I don't really care, as long as we do it, right? And several speakers spoke to that. So I won't necessarily repeat what they said, but in complete agreement, if we can get away from special and integrate security as just part of the things we do when we develop software for all 27 million of us programming computers, as opposed to, some.
Yeah, I love that. And it really syncs well with earlier, someone said if security people, we don't not just say we speak the language of the business, but we just naturally in an integrated way. For anybody who's on, I am going to be handing off at the bottom of the hour to the amazing Tanya Janka. So that's who Brooke was referencing. So stay with us. There's a lot more to come, including Tanya. Sean, your thoughts, please.
Wow, I was all over the place there. It's my heart is just racing thinking about 27 million developers and how do we as a security community come together and find a better way forward. My mind first went to supply chain, right? We think about value delivery, not in the context of us writing software, but delivering that software to our customers and then that value being extended to our customers' customers. Right? That's where the delivery actually ends. That's where our supply chains actually end. And what steps can we take to create more transparency in that process, right? More accountability with ourselves, looking at things like SBOM or, certificates of authenticity around how we build our software, how we're exposing that software. You still see a lot in this industry where security through obscurity reigns supreme. Organizations don't want to share things like SBOMs, or they don't want to commit what their software is built with or how their software is, because in the name of trade secrets, which there is a degree of that with intellectual property, but not in the name of transparency, we can't get the data as an industry that we need, because the positive side is now we can see the larger view of the trends that are going on. But the negative side is we're opening ourselves up to more threat actors because we're providing that data to them, right? We're scared to say we're vulnerable because that'll be taken advantage of. But in that vulnerability, I believe, is what will make us stronger as an industry, because with that vulnerability, we know where to focus our efforts to protect ourselves. The second part is really tying into one of the other efforts that the CFF is working on, and that's the cyber board book. That's really near and dear to my heart. It really outlines how it's imperative that cyber representation at the board level needs to evolve and reflect and align with the security estate to balance the customer and the business security outcomes, right? We can't just do all security. A lot of people have touched on that today around how security has to make people behave. It's really more of a balance with security understanding and tightly weaved into the business, and can speak to those languages, not just to convey information, but to understand what the business is trying to accomplish and the constraints around that, right? I would even be as bold as to suggest starting to look at a new breed of paired programming where we pair our executives with our security teams to actually understand the pain of the business before we go and implement security regulatory requirements, contractual agreements, and commitments that trickle down to our developers and make their lives so difficult, right? Because at the bottom, a lot of people are feeling this pain because we don't have that uniform understanding at the top. And that really starts at the board, setting the right direction with organizations to maintain and execute on strategies that have a good balance with the organizational goals.
Yeah, I love that. New kind of pair programming for anybody that lives through the agile pairs. Thank you. This has been an incredible conversation. I wish it could go on a lot longer. We have time for just a quick wrap up. Anything, Brooke, that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, the context and the difficulty of this. Someone said, we know how to do this. We know how to do what we know how to do. And yet it's a bit insufficient because of the problem of not being able to prove implementation correctness. But we can chew at the edges, and by putting stuff together, we really do start to really truly get as much as we can. And we can see in the growth of some of the companies. I mean, somebody mentioned, I forget who it was, Jimmy Lee, early Microsoft. And now we see how few, truly few issues they put in Patch Tuesdays compared to what they did 20 years ago. And it's remarkable. we can do this. We can do much better. But it's got to be more, I believe, than just a Microsoft and an Adobe and the companies that are well resourced and have been doing this for a long time. We've got to get some way to also open this up so that the brand new Web3 company startup who really has to focus on revenue and product can do the right things too.
Thank you. Sean, your last thought?
I'll keep it simple, right? I've always seen Davos as not just a place that we talk about change, but we actually enact change. So if there's anything that anyone walks away from all of these talks from all of these experts that we've had today, I would ask that you please take the time to go out, take a look at what's available in your industry and get involved. The world needs your experience. They need your perspective. That's the only way we're truly going to make a change.
Thank you. Get involved. Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Sean. I could talk to you guys forever. Thank you so much for being here. But Tanya Janka, She Hacks Purple, is going to be taking us into the next hour. Tanya, welcome. It's good to see you.
Hi, Diana. How are you?
Happy 2023.
You too. Happy New Year.
All right. Thanks all.
Thank you, Diana. Hi, everyone. So I'm Tanya. I'm going to introduce myself and then bring on the next panelists. And each one of them are going to introduce themselves, and they have to answer one of two questions. So one of the questions is, tell me about 3 cybersecurity trends that you think are going to happen in 2023 or that you're already seeing. Or they can answer, specifically talk about one of the topics from this panel. And so there's supply chain, etc. So I will go through those. But for now, I'm Tanya Janka. I'm also known as She Hacks Purple. And basically, I'm a giant nerd on the internet that talks about how to secure software a lot. I have an online academy called We Hack Purple, community, and a podcast. And I'm just obsessed with those things, essentially. And I'm very grateful to having Raj and the entire Purple Book community inviting me to this. But let's talk to our speakers, because that's more exciting. So Chitra and Mohit, who wants to go first?
I can go first. I'll start with a brief introduction about myself and pass the baton to Mohit to give his introduction. I'm Chitra Dharmarajan. I lead security engineering initiatives for Customer Identity Cloud Business Group of Okta. I've been working in Silicon Valley for about 2 decades now. I started my career as a software developer. I was working in security software for firewalls and routers and switches, and slowly evolved into leading FIPS 142 and CCAL3 certification for routers, switches, and firewalls. And this helped me evolve organically as a security leader. In the last 2 decades, I had a great privilege to work for startups, mid-sized companies, and big corporations. Now enjoying my journey as a security leader for Okta. Mohit?
Hey, thanks, Chitra. Hey, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity, and good morning, good afternoon, evening to everyone out there. So I'm Mohit Kalra, and I'm the VP of Product Security at a company called Sprinkler. Again, my journey starts as a software engineer, moved up the ladder in the software engineering world, and then kind of moved to product security. So since then, I've been securing applications, the cloud, and everything in between in order to make sure that the offering that our companies bring to the customer are secure. So that's my journey in brief. Back to you, Janka. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Both of you are actually doing such a good job of staying on time. Okay, so the 2 questions are either, what are the trends that you see coming or have already started seeing in 2023? Or you can speak to one of the topics that I put into the chat. So for everyone listening, it's securing the supply chain, addressing cybersecurity capacity and workforce needs, securing applications at the speed of innovation, securing critical infrastructure, cyber board book, so C-suite board engagement, and then identity security in an emerging threat landscape. Chitra, did you want to decide if you want to talk about trends or one of those topics?
I'm going to pick the trend. I actually didn't know Mohit is joining me in this panel. We both are product security people, so we are going to be just upvoting each other's trend observations, I believe. The top trend that comes to my mind is efficacy in vulnerability management. This seems to be pretty much the need of the hour. This is going to be a compelling and inevitable priority for businesses. We all know that software supply chain has emerged as a very lucrative attack vector for threat actors. By just exploiting one weakness or one vulnerability, there is a great opportunity for a malicious actor to steal a sensitive data or plant a malware or even take control of systems belonging to the downstream consumers. We have seen this happen in the case of Log4j and SolarWinds and so on. So prioritized vulnerability management is pretty much in everybody's mind. As we are doing our planning for this year, I was looking at some numbers. I want to share some data with this audience. I was looking at CVE.R. In year 2022, there has been about 18,828 CVEs released. That is 51 CVEs a day. It is a no-brainer. It is just impossible to patch everything. Out of this big number of 18,828, 105 of them had made it to the CISA KEV database. KEV is known exploited vulnerability catalog maintained by CISA. And I was talking to a couple of industry leaders and some back of the envelope calculations and estimates. We think about like roughly about 6 to 8% of these CVEs are riskier for the organization. So the probability of exploit is higher for about 6%. So patching 18,828 is, we don't have that level of cyber resource available at any well-funded security organizations in the planet, I would say. So this is where the topic, like, how do we prioritize vulnerability management? How do we drive efficacy in vulnerability management? So it goes without saying that we are all thinking about very much risk-based approach. Where is the real risk? Today, we are evaluating more about operational impact, business impact, severity. But I'm also seeing a trend that industry leaders are thinking about reachability analysis. It's not just about the CVEs released on the open source that your software uses, but it is also about how exactly that CVE impacts your usage of that open source. So I do see a lot of trend about tools evolving with a higher fidelity. They are touching on the reachability analysis and providing high fidelity findings, which enables companies to make a prioritized vulnerability management. That's something which I see as a top evolving trend for 2023. Mohit, do you want to share your thoughts?
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said there. I do want to kind of chime in from my perspective, but before I go there, I do want to say that, some things are changing, but many things haven't changed in security yet. The cyber attacks will continue to come to your weakest spot, no matter what you do. You harden one spot, the spot's going to change. So the attack surface might change, but the weakest spot will always be targeted. Also, the fundamentals of security haven't really changed. You may want to look at the landscape you're securing, the new technologies that come in, but the fundamentals that are still intact, and they will continue to be the same throughout the coming year as well. And as always, security teams will have less bandwidth and more work to do. They cannot give up on the old work that they were doing, and new responsibilities will add it on top of them. So with that in mind, we do have to prioritize, and prioritization is key to security. So one of the trends I do want to talk about, so I have two trends in mind, and one of the trends I want to talk about is identity and access management. So identity is the new currency of access these days. The network perimeters are being broken. The work from home situation has created a paradigm of being able to access stuff anywhere. But I do want to kind of go into the deeper details that, when you look at identity, you're not just looking at a workforce accessing its corporate network from home, but it also involves the customer accessing your product, and sometimes your product accessing other services which add value to your product itself. So identities could be just not passwords, but API keys and fundamental credentials that will give access to a lot more that you would not get otherwise. So the attack on identities is picking up, if there are being ways to bypass MFA, either through social engineering, or even if you have done the entire multi-factor authentication with your username and password, attackers will come and attack your endpoint or your laptops to take all the session tokens that you've already acquired. So the thing that we have to understand is that we are very much used to vulnerability, detecting vulnerabilities and detecting misconfiguration. But what we also need to do is start threat modeling our identities to see how overly permissive they are, to see how perpetual they are, and if possible, giving that just-in-time identity access to systems that are sensitive, and sometimes even bringing back the network perimeter for some of the identities that should be pinned down to a few networks rather than available through the entire internet. So in my opinion, when we do threat modeling, when we threat model our products, we have to look at our identity system, not just from the perspective of an IT world accessing the IT land from the home network, but across the entire product. And in addition to that, we also need to threat model by assuming breach of identities and knowing what our incident plan would be in case identities are leaked out there. So with the trends we've seen in 2022 around identities kind of being targeted, because that's the easiest and weakest spot in sometimes, it is very important for security professionals for us to be looking at them very deeply. Just as just to wrap up, my second trend I had in mind was supply chain security. I'll keep it brief. I'm not going to go into the depths of it, but essentially we've been very used to, focusing on software rewrite, software we're responsible for, deployments we're responsible for. And supply chain security essentially is saying that when you are dependent on third-party systems or libraries or images, you have to kind of have a good inventory of where do you have the third-party dependencies. What do you do if something bad were to happen or something was to be told, like say if Log4j happened, how are you going to react to it? So your ability and agility to react to third-party ecosystems. And thirdly, even though you have full trust enabled into the third party, there are incidents or vulnerabilities that can be discovered that could lead to that erosion of trust. And the first responsibility you have to your customers is to reestablish this trust by having the ability to know where to fix, what to fix, and how quickly to fix that. So that is an integral part of a supply chain security. So don't focus on just one set of supply chain, but think more holistically on what makes your ecosystem, especially coming from third parties, and what security controls do you have in place in order to ensure that you can, you have a secure ecosystem in the first place, but you also have the agility to react if that ecosystem had, some problems around security going down the line. So with that, Tanya, I'm going to hand it back to you, or Chitra, if there was something more you wanted to add.
Yeah, I just want to add a note to your observation on identity attack trends. Okta releases the State of Secure Identity report every year, and there is a lot of data about credential stuffing attacks, fraudulent registration attacks, attacks against MFA for high-value targets. It's a great read. It's definitely a good read, a lot of data points which have helped leaders drive conversations between board and other fellow leaders about the zero trust strategy. That's something which I want to share to this audience. Back to you, Tanya.
Awesome. I liked a lot of what both of you said, and having two product security people compare answers and people who work in identity, I guess. Do you know what I mean? That was really helpful. I also liked, Mohit, how you said we need to reestablish distrust, because that is a thing that all of us security folks talk about a lot. There's this implied trust because we wouldn't survive if we didn't trust each other sometimes, right? And so when we design things, we can't help but do it that way. And both of you had such good points. Okay, thank you both very much. I'm going to ask both of you to leave, and thank you both for your great input, and ask David, Cass, and John he'll introduce himself and say his name better than I did.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Chitra. Right.
Yeah, thank you, Purple Book Club, for this awesome opportunity.
Thank you. David, hi. John, hi. Welcome.
Hello.
Very
Hey,
briefly,
Tanya, and you nailed it. John Yo, that was that's the easy way to pronounce it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I'm Tanya Jenkin. I'm the kind of the moderator for this panel today. And I'm really excited to have both of you here. I'm supposed to introduce myself. So I am a nerd who's obsessed with the security of software. And so when they said, did you want to moderate this panel? I did like a little happy dance. So thank you both for being here. Who wants to go first and introduce themselves? John, you win.
Oh, I was going to say Dave, please, but happy to. Hey, my name is John Yo. I'm head of research at the Cloud Security Alliance. And what that means is I get to lead a very large think tank of subject matter experts, key stakeholders, and not just cloud, but all next generation technologies. And what we do is we explore use cases, case studies, trying to really create secure guidance and playbooks on how to adopt and deploy technology securely. That's a simple intro.
Yeah, no, that's really great though. David.
David Cass, happy to be here with everyone today. Background wise, fortunate to lead the CISOs Connect, which is really a consortium of CISOs that do a lot of publishing of their experience, how they've implemented different technologies, as well as I'm the CISO for GSR, and we're in the crypto space, and very active, kind of just contributing to the industry in general. Also a fairly nerdy background, Master Science in Engineering from UPenn, as well as a master's from MIT, so I can be as nerdy as you guys want. So happy to be joining you guys today.
Awesome. Thank you both for coming. I really appreciate you being here. Okay, so you get two choices, or one choice. You get to decide, would you like to talk about new trends in cybersecurity or InfoSec for 2023, or would you like to talk about one of the panel discussion topics? So I put them in the chat, but very quickly, they're supply chain security, addressing workforce needs, so trying to hire people in a world where we don't have enough security people to do all the jobs, securing applications, but quickly, securing critical infrastructure. How on earth do we talk to the C-suite and get them engaged? And then identity security, just in general, because that is changing so much with the way technology is changing. John, which one would you like to start with?
Well, can't we just squish them all together, right? They're just so related, but.
If you can do it in your allotted amount of time, I will applaud it.
Dave and I, we're gonna do this all in like 10 minutes, right? Davos is obviously a very busy week this week, and what stands out to me are probably a couple things from there, and we can show how they're complex on their own, but they're also complementary in nature. But the technology partnership thing really stands out to me. So when we look at securing the supply chain, the digital supply chain and physical supply chain, that's listed there. I think that's pretty important. And I think it's even complementary with what we're doing with the workforce and how we're aligning those things with the business. So what I liked about the Cyber Futures agenda is that it reflected this. If you look at our neighbors at the World Economic Forum, they represented these things too, right? So that's what made it really, those two things stand out to me. The pandemic showed us a lot of things, let's be honest, but, sticking with the technology theme, it showed that digitalization is going to be the key component for a business, especially for a modern business that wants to operate, today and going forward. It doesn't just change the way that we operate. If we look at cloud and all the virtual tools that we had to utilize over these last few years, I think it's also changed the way that we grow our businesses, our product sets, our physical products are becoming connected, and we're allowing access to those everywhere. Our products aren't just physical, but they're also digital products. Whether we like it or not, we're creating mobile applications, customer portals. We're moving into different regions, right? So our customer base is expanding, and we have all this international regulation to meet. And so if you look at that digital footprint for an organization, that grows with the business, and aligning these technology risks and the business risks is really what's going to help not just understand how to secure that digital supply chain and the technology supply chain. It's going to help us communicate these things to the C-suite and to the business. And it's going to be enforced by a workforce that can help us do these things. So I think these are the things that kind of stand out to me when I look at the agenda that we have for the cyber futures. When I looked at what's being talked about at the World Economic Forum, is how do we align these needs when it comes to securing the supply chain, when it comes to securing our workforce and building our workforce, especially for us in cybersecurity. We're going to need several of these pieces in order to operate functionally and to secure our business and grow our businesses going forward. So maybe I'm teeing something up for Dave here, but Dave, I'd love to see what you say.
So I definitely concur with what you're saying, and I'm going to kind of go for the smush model also, because I think I can, do the rapid fire version of this, because I look at all of the, the topics, and I really think, they're all extremely relevant to what's going on in today's society. And I think, a lot of us are, moving to how we do like the real zero trust, not what the vendors are trying to sell us as zero trust, from that aspect of it. So, supply chain and securing it, I think we've all learned some valuable lessons this past year that clearly has to move away from being a checklist item. And there were lessons in SolarWinds and Excellion and others of, not just doing like vendor due diligence, but even thinking about it if you develop code on your own as part of, your own internal shop, of how you do code signing, how are you making sure that the right repositories are the trusted repositories. So there's a litany of lessons done. And then, really, kudos to the CFF, Tanya, and all the others that are actively helping bring up the next generation of workforce, because I think it's, part of what we have to do as leaders in information security is really help bring up the next generation. And, one of the beautiful things I like about, InfoSec is it's continuous learning. It's kind of age independent. You can be coming straight out of high school, or you can be later in your career and joining it. There's just so many opportunities, to come in and learn something new and really contribute to the community. And then I'd say securing applications at the speed of innovation is something near and dear to my heart, because as GSR is a cloud organization that's also highly algo shop. Everything is code. Infrastructure is code, applications, everything is code now, from that point of view. And I have to figure out, not only how do you do, secure development properly, but how do you get into the whole development tool chain and provide the proper amount of security without really breaking things. So, really, kind of living that whole DevSecOps aspect of it. Securing critical infrastructure also goes hand in hand in that aspect of it. I think, when you look at the fact that, from a US construct, the majority of what's considered critical infrastructure is actually owned by the private sector. So I think there, we need to continue to grow those public-private partnerships, continue to get better about sharing information, and really just continue to do that. I think there's lots of groups that are doing very well in that space, but there's always room for improvement. And then from the, the C-suite level, I think it's been clear, especially over the past year or two, not only from, guidance published by the SEC and other regulators, and like New York DFS, that there's an expectation now coming to the board level that the board has to have, decent knowledge of cybersecurity and what the relevant threats are. They don't necessarily have to be experts of it, but they do need to be aware of it, and they need to be able to really ask the right questions. So part of that is that the CISO perspective is, how do we help train, and our leadership to be asking the right questions from that point of view, to make sure that the risks are addressed and the risks are rising to the right level. So I think we're going to continue to see more and more board engagement from that aspect of it. And then, securing identity, again, that's going to be the whole, what's old is new again. From that point of view, it's kind of like asset management. Organizations, the bigger the organization, almost the more you struggle with some of these basic constructs. I think there's a lot to potentially offer and how we get better at doing identity security, and how, we kind of leverage some of the newer technologies, maybe blockchain as a source of, giving the individual, their ability to really manage their identity. So I think there's a lot more coming and developing that space. So hopefully I did it within my time constraints, but I can go all day on this stuff. So
you know what I liked what you said too, Dave. You kind of slipped in zero trust there, and we look at trying to simplify the complexity of technology and security, especially if you're educating workforces, if you're trying to communicate things to the C-suite, to the board. Zero trust can really simplify and summarize a lot of these critical infrastructure, software supply chain, application development issues, because we're looking at key pillars on what are the critical data points that we're trying to protect? How do you access these things? If you look at the pillars, there's device, networks, all these things that are related to the critical source, the critical asset that we're trying to protect. So if there's a great way to simplify it, zero trust is a concept with principles that we can all kind of understand and follow. And I like how Dave slipped that in there, because I think that's pretty important to understand. I think this year, if we're going to really communicate security and simplify it for everybody else, zero trust is a great way to do that.
So we just have 5 minutes left, and I wanted to ask both of you an extra question that wasn't in the list, and I'm going to give you my answer first. So what is a trend you wish that you could see in 2023? Because the trend I would love to see is companies making it, like, spending time on improving the process so that they can ship bug fixes faster. This might sound ridiculous, but one of my friends called me 2 weeks ago and told me that she found merge requests from me in 2021 at a client site, and they still hadn't put my bug fixes in. And so they're like, yeah, we fixed those security bugs. I'm like, no, you didn't push it to prod. It's not actually fixed. Oh no. And their biggest threat sometimes is that they just can't actually get the fixes out in a reasonable amount of time. So that's my wish for this year. Could both of you tell me a wish, like a trend you wish would happen?
Who'd like to go first? I do have something in the chamber there, Dave.
Well,
okay, if you'd like to lead off, great.
I have a few things, but just kind of playing off of what Tanya had mentioned too. I think change management, and we're talking about supply chain change management, I think that's huge, right? Especially when you look at vulnerabilities and exposures, deep into cloud infrastructure, that as you build your own applications onto these things, so many vulnerabilities that can happen at the top of the supply chain can impact how customers operate downstream. And so I think that's a really important piece to see. And I think the CVE world is really cool what we do there too, when we look at identifying vulnerabilities that are software that's customer owned. In today's services world, we don't own everything. And so we need to understand also what our technology partners own and what vulnerabilities they're patching. And then it goes into how we configure things. Everybody talks about misconfigurations as being one of the biggest exploits that we've had lately. And then that's just it. If we can understand change configuration better, if we can communicate downstream all, how these are impacting our applications and our customer environments, I think that's going to be a huge way in how not only do we continue to increase how we use and adopt cloud computing, but it's going to help us operate securely, faster, and better. And so, Dave.
Yeah, for me, I kind of have two things. I would say, like, to continue to make significant strides in the true secure SDLC. It's one of those things that looks great on paper, but is really tough to get right, especially when you're doing it at speed. So I'd say room for significant improvement there, and then kind of continued improvement on how do we raise the bar from training awareness. I mean, the phishing, smishing attacks have really gotten really good, and it's training awareness is kind of like the unsung hero of how do you deliver that right message to the constituents, to the company, the right number of times where you're not irritating everybody, but you're raising the bar, from that aspect of it, just to continue to protect the organizations. Because these attacks have gotten really, really good, and they just continue to persist because they work so well. So I'd say those are probably my top two.
All of those were great. And I am adding those to my list of wishes for 2023. I find it interesting how a lot of us will make New Year's resolutions. And I think the three of us are making resolutions we want everyone else to take up as well. So thank you both so much for being on. I really appreciate all that you are doing. And thank you for being on this panel. And I think we have two people up next.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so
My
much.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
And the next speakers are, is it Jeremy and Kishan? Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Tanya.
Welcome. I think we have another person who's connecting to audio. There we go.
Yes.
Awesome. Welcome, both of you. Would you like to introduce yourself, Jyothi? Did I say that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jyothi Charyulu. I have about 20 years of experience leading development, data integration, application security, risk programs, authentication, identification, etc. Currently, I work at Fidelity Investments. I'm the director, and I lead the strategy for automation and platform engineering efficiencies, including application security, coordination, and integration. And I've had the beautiful opportunity to lead enterprise AppSec programs, innovating them both at Sabre, where I worked earlier before, and currently at Fidelity.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. DJ, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Tanya, thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. I'm Vijay Ajaju. I'm a partner at KPMG's Cyber and Tech practice. I've had privilege serving some of the largest Fortune 10 to Fortune 100 tech companies, all the way from building their cyber strategy execution, and when needed, ran some of the largest breach response war rooms and investigations. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. I am supposed to briefly introduce myself. So I am a person that's very, very interested in the security of software. And I'm the founder of We Hack Purple, which is an online academy community podcast. And mostly all we talk about is securing software. So I'm a bit of a broken record, but I think in a good way. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here. So we have, I want to ask both of you some questions, and we have two choices. So you can either talk about cybersecurity trends that you see or hope to see in 2023, or we could talk about one of the list of topics that I put in the chat. So securing the supply chain, figuring out how to make a strong workforce that has good experience in cybersecurity, securing applications quickly, securing critical infrastructure, which is always really difficult, how to talk to the C-suite and get them more engaged with the importance of cybersecurity and managing risk. And then lastly, how do we do identity when everything's constantly changing? They worded them in a bit more formal ways, but I think that both of you know all these topics very well. So Jyothi, do you want to lead off?
Absolutely, thank you. I mean, the topic sounds so interesting. I could talk a lot about application security, how to talk to C-suite, but I'd like the topic of trends as well. And so I'm going to pick that. Looking at back at the 2022 or earlier, the same trends, what we see in the past, will continue to play in the future. We won't see anything absolutely new. Because as Albert Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. So unless we fundamentally change, we will continue to see the similar trends as previous years. Like some of the past trends in cybersecurity, crypto mining was a top threat. I think that's going to be a top threat in the future as well. Phishing, another huge trend. I don't see it going anywhere. Ransomware, for example. And then similarly, other top threats like insider threat, right? That's huge. Malware automation, social engineering, phishing, data breaches. That's huge because data breaches can be very expensive. Cloud computing risks, IoT. And then there's also one big, very fundamental problem that exists is a very large skills gap in cybersecurity. people sometimes don't understand what's entailed and how can we solve these problems. But there's also some good news, because we do see companies adopting more secure practices, as related to maybe, MFA or authentication authorization, and running more phishing campaigns, increasing internal education, etc., and then automating your pipelines, or looking at how you can look at securing your code, your application security code. But then for 2023, when I was looking into it, a few key trends do come up to the surface. So one is, you've seen AI, right? I mean, look at the popularity of ChatGPT. I'm sure a lot of people have talked about ChatGPT, so I'll sound like a broken record if I talk about that as well. But since it was released in November 2022, it's huge, and the implication is huge. So AI and use of deep fakes, I believe, is going to be a top trend in 2022. Because, AI, like hackers use AI and machine learning, they could use it to target enterprises. Well, we have pen testers, and we have, our security professional also using AI. They could use it for root cause analysis or security analysis. You're looking at patterns, creating roadmaps based on these patterns and indicators of compromise. But, we have to be really, really careful, because, for example, data poisoning, the same training data set that's used by our security teams could be used in poison, and contaminated. And then, the learning algorithms, they are shaped by the training data sets. So poisoning could effectively reprogram even these algorithms. Similarly, deep fake data. You have so many elections to be planned in 2023. So how do you know, what is true, what's fake? Because we, again, depend on the corpus of knowledge for AI. So what if these bad guys go into that corpus of knowledge and then they corrupt that? So, and then that's what, happens, whether it's deep fake or it's the environment to test out the AI. Another top trend I would see also is IoT and cloud security. Because think of IoT as a computer, right? I mean, your car could be your own computer, your refrigerator could be your computer. But the thing is, it runs again on application code. And even cloud security, the more devices you connect to a network, you're opening up. It's just like your own house. You're opening up more windows and more doors for an attacker to get into our systems. So that's, again, something that we should really, really look into. And a third trend that was not there so much in the past was working from home. With the COVID pandemic, we've had a lot of work from home situations. So we do need to secure devices, look at, creating networks with non-secure devices could unwittingly have, employees fall prey to phishing attacks. So that's, again, something very critical. So what's solution for all this? So I would say, again, the similar solution that you had earlier could also be applied. So the number one I would say is you have to triage. You cannot boil your ocean. Like if you have 10,000 applications or you have 10 applications, you have 6,000 applications. If you put the same kind of controls around these, you're going to get fatigue from decision making, and then it's going to be from a risk assessment perspective as well. What's your threat landscape look like? Is this really threat, or is it really a threat, or it's not? For a kitchen menu application, may not pose that much of a threat. But depending on where it is in the network, it might be risky as well, because if it's public facing, that might open up your, APIs or the application to the internet. So number one would be, again, from a solution perspective, to triage and to strategize and look at what are your public facing APIs, applications, and then you build a framework that utilizes security around, your application data that's internet facing, your sensitive data, your access, your code, etc. And I would say that you have to build, digitize your platforms. And that's where platform engineering frameworks are key. And I really emphasize on that, because platform engineering frameworks integrate with long-term sustainability, long-term scalability, and then they build in stability and security. So it's literally the communication that used to not occur between development. My team is developing something, and oh my God, I hate those security teams because they slow me down. They don't let me release it as often to production. So that when you build an integrated framework that's based on platform engineering concepts, you bring in all the different types of either businesses or applications that all talk to each other. So that's key to really scale it across organizations, because you'll go back and take a look at your CI/CD pipeline and then say, okay, which are the different integrations that happen with these pipelines? And then you would, again, investigate that, but then you would again document it and automate it. So that's important. And again, you would look at there's a microservices architecture, and then looking at metrics is another key item as well. So when you look at the CI/CD pipeline, how do you shift left? Would be how do you put preventative controls in your code repository, not an application level, but you really move the repo back for early identification and automate. So that's how you focus on automation using data and chatbots and use AI. So we can also go back and take a look at malicious activity is tracked automatically. All the integrations are tracked automatically, and then you build a DevSecOps culture. I think that's really key. Because when you build a DevSecOps culture, it's not a gap between the development and the operations or the security teams. It's pretty much security becomes invisible because you're integrating security, you're having it built in, and everyone is looking out for security of the code. It's not just some governance gate at the end of the pipeline. It's not some security professional. If I'm a developer or I'm a business leader or I'm a board member, security is my job. So you would reduce the reliance on the separation of duties, and you become more of a generalist, whether you're a board member or whether you're a developer or you're a QA tester. Everyone is looking out. And then also when you have built-in security, it's just automatic, right? You don't think about security. It's not an afterthought. It happens, it's integrated within that. And then most importantly also is communication and making sure that we are having a security awareness culture. It's DevSecOps culture has to always be married with good communication and good awareness that this is why we do what we do.
Oh, I agree so much. Oh my gosh, I feel like you gave us 100 homework items to do.
I know, I don't have enough time because it's so much to talk about.
I know, that was great. VJ, I it's hard to follow up that, but I know you can do it.
Yeah, no, hey, thanks for the tee up, Jyoti. Appreciate that. I think if you think about from a large tech companies and imagine all the big tech and the probably your favorite apps that you use on a daily basis. I mean, that's what the kind of the story I just want to share. How are they approaching cybersecurity and what are some of the lessons learned, right? So I think it's a little different angle from a trends perspective. Where are they investing? I think the underpinning is all about digital trust. I think it's becoming fundamental for the growth of these tech companies as they roll out sort of the emerging tech like blockchain or AR, VR. We just talked about AI and ML, or for that matter, quantum computing. I think there is a clear realization that for their growth and success of future applications like metaverse, connected systems, smart system, NFTs, etc., they will be dependent upon trust to be instilled in multiple dimensions. And we believe that kind of cybersecurity is like a golden thread that sort of weaves into the entire organization construct to sort of instill and maintain that trust. So I think I break it down into kind of 3 dimensions, kind of how tech companies are approaching. and again, it's just not a gross generalization, but I think they're breaking down into 3 areas like securing the product, securing the customer, and securing the enterprise. So I think there is a lot said about, from a product standpoint, some of the biggest tech companies have done phenomenally well in terms of how they've streamlined their code repositories, their DevOps pipeline. Yes, security was an afterthought 5 years ago, but things have changed significantly. Security and privacy, sort of the controls and the integrations are done, seamlessly. So there's a long ways they've come. Yes, there is more to be done. I think in 2 areas I would say is some of the legacy tech or the tech debt that exists, as well as in terms of, just making sure So yeah, some of the legacy tech, as well as I would say open source software. I know we talked about supply chain earlier as well with some of the other presenters. I think those will continue to be an area where they are going to make investments. 80% of the software code is not written by the developers, it's somebody else has written. So I think those would be an area. One of the trends that we of course see a lot more happening is tech is getting more and more regulated. So that, like financial services, you see the emergence of the regulations coming in. So what we are seeing, some of the leading tech companies, they've made compliance as code. So that has been kind of phenomenal. One of our clients, they've got hundreds of engineers in their compliance team. Even evidence collection is an API to kind of meet the requirements. So again, we see that how InfoSec and privacy sort of the capabilities got codified. We're seeing compliance requirements get codified, and so you have a better enforcement and monitoring. The other dimension is you think about from securing the customer, especially where money movement. I would like to give an example where the money movement and the payments are involved, or fintechs, for example. The construct of logical and physical merging of the data sets from your fraud teams, your billing systems, your CRM systems, geolocation data, et cetera, from a customer perspective, will continue to sort of take priority, given some of the account takeover risks, credential replay attacks, or phishing attempts will continue to happen. So again, sort of the building of the security quote unquote data lake or fusion centers, we see that as being an area where the organization boundaries are being broken down and the data sets are being shared. So you're able to actually have a much better triage in terms of, is this a suspicious activity or a legit user trying to come in? So we see that as a huge focus area. And I think especially on the B2C sort of the area, whether it's a website or apps, the efficacy of taking user feedback has improved significantly. While you have the automation, but you could go on Amazon and provide a complaint, provide a feedback about a suspicious activity, and that feedback loop has matured significantly. And so when you look at the large tech, there is an element of both sort of the automated proactive as well as kind of taking the feedback from the users to sort of have that human in the loop to drive the precision and the efficacy of the controls. And I think in the securing the enterprise, I would say, I think some of the previous presenters talked about zero trust, and of course, zero trust as a principle, not from a marketing standpoint, but I think we are seeing sort of the identity and access management sort of 3.0 or 3.5 version from a generation standpoint, and really much more focused, given that phishing continues to be an issue, social engineering, et cetera. Still a emphasis on access management, leveraging zero trust principles, given the fact M&A activities happening, some of the legacy tech debt exists, so organizations trying to get our arms around, and even the third parties, your kind of the supplier ecosystem. So I mean, I think overall those are the three dimensions we see like the tech companies kind of approach their security strategy. But I think what it means for our security practitioners is, how do we change ourselves? How do we innovate? We cannot be sort of leverage defense in depth in terms of, hey, layer down more security tools. You can lead up to fatigue. So as security practitioners, security leaders, we got to change and innovate. And I would say from a tech company standpoint, the CISOs are already in the boardroom. They already have sort of the eyes and ears of the CEO. And I think they're no longer about just prevent and detect. They're sort of the business enablers and really leading the charge in terms of preserving trust with their stakeholders.
It's good. I want all the things you said to come true, except the bad things, obviously. But I mean, I feel like both of you made such great points, and I could keep you on for another hour, but I'm not allowed. So thank you both so much for your amazing comments and predictions. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on this stream with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
my
that.
pleasure. Now I want to welcome on Tom Patterson. Tom, how you doing?
I am happy to be here, at least electronically.
Excellent. I think that we have some potential people who might show up partway through our your and my time. So if someone suddenly appears, we'll just be surprised and it'll be great.
We'll roll with it.
I'm supposed to introduce myself to each guest. So I'm Tanya Jenka. I'm a nerd who really likes AppSec, and I run We Hack Purple, a small online academy, community, and podcast dedicated to that topic. But I want to hear about you. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Tom Patterson. I'm a multiple-time attendee at the CFF in Davos each year, who unfortunately at the last second couldn't make it this year. So I'm sending all my best wishes to everyone that's able to participate in person. I've been dialed in since the early mornings of dawn this morning, and I've just been wowed by the talk that's been happening this year. It's another great year of progress from a security perspective, and happy to play a small part in that. Lifelong security guy. The last 7 years, I've been working with the White House on their national plan to emerge by the end of this decade in a stronger position relative to these advanced technologies like quantum and AI and 5G. From a policy perspective, a lot of progress has been made there. The end of last year, I joined Accenture to lead up Accenture's global quantum and space security businesses. And it was really the next step in that move towards a whole of world effort to try and harness these new technologies in a way that make the world a safer and more privacy enhanced version of itself. We learned a lot when we first rolled out the internet way back when, and the way we did it wasn't optimal from a security perspective. Now we have this opportunity to really leverage, you've seen with ChatGPT, seeing what AI is going to affect everything that we do. So we have a chance to actually do that with security as a positive intention. It's the same now going around quantum. It's maybe a step behind ChatGPT, but it in 2023 is going to just rock the world. We've already heard the CEO of IBM this morning at Davos talk about the fact that by the end of this year, IBM will have available in their cloud a 1,000-qubit computer that will be strong enough, as proposed by adversarial groups, to crack encryption today. So there's a real push towards, and again, why I joined Accenture. Accenture is able to work with most of the large, important organizations of the world to get them to start defending themselves against this coming quantum threat.
Oh my gosh, Tom, I did not hear that happened this morning. So I'm very interested in watching the reruns of this, because in my time zone, that was very early. Thank you very much for joining us, even if it's just virtually. I'm really happy to have you here. So I have questions. So you get to choose a question, but I think that we might have slightly more time. So that's great. But I wanted to talk about either cybersecurity trends that you think are coming for 2023, or that you hope are coming for 2023, or I have a bunch of questions or topics on the side, and we wanted to hear just your opinion on one or any of them if you decide. So how to secure the supply chain.
On trends, Tanya.
Yeah.
There's, been talked about at the top of the mountain today. I'm sure a lot of the other trends that are out there, certainly down on the Strasse, there's been a lot of talk today around big changes that are coming from a technology perspective. How is 5G going to change the world? How is AI going to change the world? Let me talk for a minute about one thing that I see really popping in 2023, and that's the not just building of quantum computers, but the availability of quantum computers to the entire world. It's going to change the way people start to compute. It's a whole new way of looking at what kinds of questions should be asked, but also it opens up for adversaries the opportunity to decrypt all of our encryption. So all of our secrets that have been encrypted using the best of classical computers today. So think the entire financial sector, think everything that happens, all your secrets laid bare to anyone that has access to a quantum computer, which is now available online. That is going to change everything that we do. So there's a race underway now to try and add another layer of encryption to what we currently do, so that it will defeat these coming quantum computers. The good news is 5 or 6 years ago, the smartest people in the world started looking at this problem. They've now developed a series of standards. these can be implemented. There's this concept called crypto agility because we're not quite sure what's going to work. So we want to move to a world where we can easily adjust our encryption to work with and defeat against these kinds of attacks that are coming. We know that they're coming from quantum computers. That is this big race that's happening in parallel to zero trust and in parallel to 5G and these other big issues that are out there, how to stop ransomware, all important issues of today. Quantum computing in 2023 has joined that front. And luckily, there's a lot of good news there in order to defend yourself against it.
Where have they published this information about how we can try to change the way we're doing encryption? Can we send our viewers?
It's been underway for a while, but it hasn't been front and center because it wasn't seen as today's problem. It was always tomorrow's problem. So there's a lot of information out there. National Bureau of Standards, NIST in the US is sort of the organizer of most of the ways to defend against this. But in European states, most of the countries have their own programs in place. And there is a whole burgeoning post-quantum encryption business coming up now. There's whole new companies that didn't exist a couple of years ago that are going to be really important to your defense going forward. It's just a fun time to get, yet another fun time to be in security. A lot of change, but this is one that's it's a good news story. We know the bad things are coming. There's even a thing called steal now, decrypt later, where adversaries are stealing stuff that they can't decrypt today, knowing that soon they'll have a quantum computer access and they'll be able to decrypt it. So there's this race going on. But even though we know the bad, we also know that the good's been working for about 4 or 5 years. The paper that I worked on, the report I worked on at the White House called the National Cyber Moonshot, talked extensively about this. You can download it from the White House or from Department of Homeland Security, National Cyber Moonshot. And you'll see in there what we talk about the coming quantum threat. And then look at what companies like Accenture are doing to help companies defend today against this threat that's here for, in some instances today, but it's going to be widespread coming soon.
Tom, we have a question from Kishan. Kishan, did you want to put that in the chat or come on? Well, Kishan has
So Kishan, hey Tanya, hey Tom, thank you for joining in this fantastic conversation. So Kishan, he's not part of the speaker lineup. He's helping out with the event. So yeah, he's the one who's making sure that all your transitions are happening smoothly in the back end.
Thank you, Kishan.
Yes.
Okay, so not a question for us. Tom, so let's say I'm very excited about what you've been just telling me about, because I am. Where could I go read up more about this or learn about it more? Because it feels like it's really bleeding edge sort of thing. And
yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the reasons I joined Accenture, so we can get around to the most important organizations first and get them started. What we do is we start with this strategy phase to answer sort of the key questions. What is this quantum computing threat that I'm hearing about? How does it relate to me? Where do I find out, what it's going to cost to defend it? How long will it take for us to defend against it? What's our best path and architecture going forward? These are the same questions we get over and over again. And I'd imagine people listening to this for the first time are having these same kinds of questions. So we work with our clients around the world to help do these strategy engagements to help them get to that point. And then some of these clients are now ready to start to move and start to implement these defenses and get going even faster. Lots of information can be found again at NIST, searching for post-quantum, with Accenture searching for post-quantum security or quantum security. But this is something where it definitely pays to learn up. Back in the 60s, when quantum physics was first being discussed, very famously, Albert Einstein looked at it and said, "This is spooky." And so a lot of people said, wow, well, if it's too spooky for Einstein, I've just got no chance. But in reality, this is something that will affect everybody. It's that the attacks are on our classical computing infrastructure. Our defenses, luckily, are with classical computing infrastructure. We just need a different way to do it. It turns out all of our encryption is pretty much based on this concept of factoring, where you take 2 prime numbers and multiply them together to a really big number. That's easy to do. But taking that really big number and figuring out which 2 prime numbers came is really hard to do. That's what encryption boils down to. What turns out is a quantum computer can do that in a millisecond. It just happens, as opposed to a classical computer, which would take millions or billions of years. So it's a whole different way we need to encrypt our data. We still need encryption, but it needs to be these new ways. NIST is championing the best thinking on how to come up with what those ways are. There's companies already building that into their products and services. And then again, what we're advocating here at Accenture is that every key organization start to do a re-inventory of where their risks are relative to this quantum threat and what they should do about it and when they should start, which in many cases is today.
That's amazing, Tom. This is really exciting. And thank you for giving us places where we can go and learn more, because there's only so much that you can say in 7 minutes. Did you have, so we just have 1 minute left. Did you have a closing thought or maybe something inspirational or something that you wanted to add before I hand this over to Raj?
Yeah, and thanks for that, because this is a positive story. There's so many things that I've worked on in security. Many of us have worked on over the years where it's like, man, this is horrible. We know exactly what they're doing and how we're going to stop this. And there are lots of today's problems that are still in that category. Quantum computing is not one of those. It is worth the time for smart cyber folks to learn what this means to them, to figure it out either on their own, take a class, work with a strategy company like Accenture, but start to ingest it. The threat is real. The countermeasures, the capabilities to defend yourself are equally real. And the only thing stopping is that spooky label from the 1960s. We've got to get past that and start to learn. Plus, there's this upside of quantum computing that if you do learn the defenses, you're automatically learning sort of the basic principles about entanglement and superposition in these things called qubits as opposed to bits. Whereas a bit can be on or off, a qubit can be anything at any time, all the time. And so think of how much more powerful a computer would be if it was based on something like that as its unit, as opposed to just a dumb on and off. And so it's life-changing how we're going to use quantum computing for good. I just want to make sure that we as a collective society are also defending ourselves against nefarious users that are going to use it against us. And with that, I will turn it back to you, but wish everybody to take a look at it, see where it works, where it affects them, and start to take some defensive actions today.
Thank you so much, Tom. That was awesome. I'm like, oh, I'm going to read up on this all afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, especially when you're in another continent. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Raj, Raj, come back. Thank you, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Bye. There you are, Raj.
Yeah. Hey, Tanya, thank you so much. Such an amazing conversation here. So much energy. And I just love the amount of participation, the kind of engagement that was there. I know you joined in at a very short notice. Really appreciate that. That shows the passion you have for the subject and your attitude to give back to the community, right? So really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Raj. Have fun doing the wrap up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll see you, and we'll have this recording available for everybody. For those of you still watching, sorry for the bad lighting here. I'm sitting under a light, which is not really that good. But for all that who participated as audience, thank you so much for being here and asking questions along the way. And for all those speakers who came in and shared their perspectives, fantastic. There is so much. It was like drinking from the fire hose for me. There was so much good information that was coming at me that I need some time to digest all that. That's what we'll do. The beauty of that is all of this is recorded. So it will be available on LinkedIn for you to watch. For those of you who missed, I know many of you wanted to join, but maybe you'll get to watch this later. Thank you all very much. I'm thinking, looking at the great level of engagement that we got, maybe we'll do this more often. Maybe once in a quarter or once in 6 months, we'll see, depending on the subject and the event, but I'm certainly very encouraged by what I saw today. So that's all. Signing off from Davos here. We'll be in touch either through LinkedIn or through emails or the meetings. See you.